Good evening. Priscilla Sigalnik, Assistant Director for Engineering and Operations with Environmental Services. So tonight I'm going to take you through our fiscal year 19 achievements, talk about some of the projects we still have in progress, and then talk to you about some of the goals that we have for fiscal year 20. So in FY19, we completed the installation of the Kingfisher Canal water quality structure. We improved the drainage at Southeast 17th Avenue, where we had a sunken catch basin, and repaired that sunken catch basin. We produced design documents for the Environmental Services building renovation, together with our consultant, Ken Carlson. We resurfaced the Barrier Island, Newport Center, Coral Manor neighborhood, and Southeast 2nd Avenue. Now, this is still an ongoing resurfacing project. We are still working in numerous neighborhoods. The asphalt company is out of the city at the moment, but they will be returning shortly. Guardrail installation is complete at Military Trail. This is in the S-curve south of 10th Street. Southeast 15th Avenue Bridge, the wall was repaired after a vehicular incident in December. And the Villages of Hillsboro boat ramp, we extended the boat ramp in order to help boats enter the Hillsboro Canal. Some achievements that we still have in progress but are well underway. We completed the design for the 8th and 9th Terrace improvements, and this is currently being procured, and we will have a job order contract for that project here shortly. Completion of the Stormwater Master Plan, we anticipate receiving proposals this Friday, so this is something we will be working on very shortly. Construction of the sidewalk on Military Trail, this award will go before you on July 2nd. Construction improvements to the Environmental Service building, so we anticipate starting construction before the year is out, before October 1. FEC fence from Hillsboro Boulevard to 4th Street, we're working with the vendor on beginning that improvement. Updating the FEMA community rating system, so our goal is to increase the flood insurance discount to our residents. Implementation of asset management software. We are hoping to track all of our activities on our city assets, just so we can better manage our assets. And the Brunhilde Richardson Knowles Memorial Park and Historic Cemetery, as you all well know, this is a team effort among various departments in the city, and we have assisted both with earthwork and project management. Our FY20 goals include completing the renovation of our Environmental Services building. We will be completing our Stormwater Master Plan and identifying critical infrastructure needs citywide. We want to address those drainage needs with repetitive flooding in the city, and identify storm drain pipe for lining and rehabilitation. This would be maintaining systems that are already in place and just trying to line them to keep them in place. We're going to repair deficiencies on bridges. Every 2 years we receive reports from FDOT, and they tell us about repairs that are needed to our bridges, and our intent with our capital outlay is to make these repairs. We want to continue to provide safe walking surfaces for our public, and part of that is making sure that we update our ADA transition plan and are aware of the needs throughout the city where we need to address ADA. And most importantly, we want to always increase our response times for plans review and engineering permits, and coordinate this work with development services so that we become more efficient with our electronic tracking and permitting. So here is a breakdown of our budgets. You'll see in personnel services that we do show an increase in our stormwater fund. A reminder, stormwater fund was created this past fiscal cycle as a new fund. And we currently only have 3 folks who work in this, in our operations, and one of the gentlemen is on night duty. So we really only have 2 men operating at any given time throughout the city. We need to beef up the staff for that crew so that we can perform more preventative maintenance throughout the city. So we are asking for a maintenance worker, we're asking for a stormwater technician, and we really need somebody to lead this crew. And that's a reclassification of our senior stormwater operator to a lead stormwater technician. And that reclass is shown as a difference between what the current lead senior operator starting salary is and what the stormwater technician, lead stormwater technician would be paid. So that is the increase in personnel services. We do show a decrease in our operating expenditures because We've encumbered the cost for the master plan this fiscal cycle, so we won't have that again in FY20. And we are showing a capital outlay for stormwater pipe replacement and catch basins in the amount of $250,000 and vehicle replacements. And these are for vehicles that we inherited from the Road and Bridge Fund that were converted to the Stormwater Fund, and they're up for replacement. They've been on deferment, and that's for one dump truck and one truck. For our Road and Bridge Fund, our personnel services remain unchanged. Our operating expenditures show a slight decrease, and our capital outlay, again, is pretty much holding the line. Here we're needing the capital outlay for city bridge rehabilitation, as I previously discussed, the FEC fence continuation. Our goal is to continue this all the way down to 48th Street, but we will do as much as our budget will allow in any given year. And we have the spoils dry pit in this allocation, and that is so that we can dewater some of the street sweepings before we take them and tip these sweepings, and that'll save the city some operational costs. We are replacing one vehicle, one truck, and we are requesting a purchase of a street roller and trailer to help us better do our asphalt repairs. And future considerations beyond FY20, we really need to be thinking about road reconstruction. Milling and resurfacing is a rehabilitation. It's not a reconstruction, and we do have some needs in the city where we have structural deficiencies in the roadway, where you'll see some reflective cracking in the roads. Those are in need of reconstruction. There might be some drainage issue associated with it, so all of that will be under consideration with drainage. We have aging city bridges, and this does require a major capital investment. We need to be thinking about appropriating funds for these future replacements or rehabilitations. We need to be thinking about the future and climate change and flood resiliency. This is going to be a major component of our stormwater master plan, and we need to be thinking about how we're going to address this in the future. Desired streetscape elements. More and more municipalities are creating a branding for their communities and their cities with decorative elements. They do come with an initial capital cost and an operational cost for maintenance, so we need to keep those under consideration. And we also need to be thinking about smart technology in the future and just being able to enable that development in the future. So perhaps spare conduit with development so we can have fiber optic running through there for municipal needs and those kind of elements that we need to be thinking about with reconstruction.
We're going to move on to the utilities portion, the utilities enterprise fund. Are there any questions on the road and bridge?
I do have, Commissioner Hudek, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Going back to the stormwater fund slide. You can go back a couple of slides. Where we have the operating budget. There we go. So now I'm looking at the costs for the maintenance worker and the stormwater technician. Now, yesterday, we had a presentation, and the cost for an administrative assistant was $90,000. And we were told that $50,000 of it was salary, and the other $40,000 was basically benefits. So now, my question is, are these benefited positions? And if they are, I presume the benefits cost is not included in those two figures.
You're correct. The benefits are not included in these salaries, sir.
Okay, so then those costs are going to be even higher?
The change in the FY budget 19 and the FY20 recommendation, that's inclusive of all benefit costs. That's done through the payroll projection, so that's the true cost that you see. Ms. Teslia would have put all the costs in relation to the benefits package for these positions into that FY20 recommendation. This right here is just showing you the salary costs for the position, salary cost increases in the details below.
Click your mic.
About that. One position had a benefit cost of about $40,000. Now, I presume the lead stormwater technician already has the benefits, so we don't have to worry about the benefits associated with that because they're already inclusive. But this $94,000, it doesn't look like it's adding up, and that's just an observation.
Commissioner Parnas?
How many bridges do we actually have in the city, and how many of them need repair?
Well, I haven't received the FDOT report yet for this biennium. I'm waiting for it. They've just completed their inspections. They've been out over all the city bridges. It's 9 city bridges, and they've just completed their inspections, but they haven't submitted their reports yet. So I don't know exactly what deficiencies, but we do know some deficiencies just from prior reports that have not been fixed.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding the stormwater pipe replacement and catch basin installations. Is that $250,000 for general maintenance that we might have, or is this our first work based on our master plan?
Well, the master plan is going to be ongoing this year. These are really to address repetitive drainage issues that we know about right now that we need to find some relief for immediately.
Okay.
So the stormwater master plan is going to be ongoing throughout the year. It's an 8-month project starting now, so we'll go well into, we'll be budgeting again this time next year, and I'll have better information at that point to put together a real capital plan to address the citywide needs, and
Okay.
that plan will feed that.
I guess my point is, and I'm glad we have some money in here to take care of this, I don't want that $250,000. We have some very serious flooding issues in some areas, especially,
Absolutely.
I know in the central part of the city, some of the older areas, that surf is up to their doors whenever we get a decent rain.
Yes.
Those are some of the areas of need that I don't think we need a master plan to figure out where they're at.
Exactly.
And I'd like to see that $250,000
Right, that's what
goes
that's
to that.
intended for
Okay,
those
good.
immediate repetitive flooding needs.
Excellent, excellent, okay. Commissioner, Vice Mayor.
Sticking with this slide here, so it's showing for the stormwater fund a decrease of $344,000. Are you anticipating a reduction in the stormwater rate as a result of those savings, or are you planning on using those savings as seed money for the projects that are going to be identified in the master plan that is forthcoming?
We're still waiting to find out what the revenue projections are, as I understand, so I can't make a projection yet for next year as to how much we have for capital outlay. And so next year, we'll really be in a better position to know how much money is coming in, so we can program improvement citywide. This being the first year, we don't have enough information at this point.
So is the stormwater rate anticipated being the same then?
Yes, the stormwater rate is going to remain the same. Once we do complete the master plan, as Priscilla was saying, we'll have a much better understanding of the projects that we have before us from a 5-year capital improvement program perspective. We'll understand those costs. We'll be able to match those to the revenues based off the existing rate, and we'll be in a much better position to project from there.
Okay, because my thought process is don't be too quick to reduce that rate, because I suspect when that plan comes out, there's going to be a lot of things on there, as the mayor alluded to, a lot of projects that are going to far exceed that $250,000 number that's up there.
Yes.
The second, if you could go forward one slide, please. The second question that I have I guess it's one more slide. There you go. Oh, back one. With respect to future considerations, what are we doing to assess and take seriously climate change in Deerfield Beach? Are we going to have like a master plan, if you will, or some projected goals on that? I know like the county, for example, if I remember correctly, I read a while back, is requiring like seawall, the height of seawalls to rise. I think that's coming up. What are we planning in our city specifically to address this?
So our stormwater master plan is not just a master plan for quantity and quality of stormwater, it's also for flood resiliency. We're going to be looking at what policies we need to either add to our city code or that we need to be considering for the future, and all of that will come into effect. We're going to be using all of Broward County's latest projections, and they've done numerous new studies on the the water table, and new flood elevations. And so all of that's going to be taken into consideration with the new stormwater master plan, and it will be a fluid document that we'll have to continue to update over years. But the intent is that we're also addressing flood resiliency with stormwater conveyance.
Okay, so this is going to be a pretty critical year coming up, once that master plan comes up, is to evaluate all this information
Right.
and data planning going forward.
Recommendations for ordinances and correct.
Okay.
Is that it? Okay, thank you.
Alan Fatty, Assistant Director for Utilities. As for 2019 achievement, to make sure that we have good water quality, we are continuously testing and monitoring the quality of water at the plant and in distribution system. And we have continued our work to protect the well fields and reduce the potential for pollution getting into the water wells. To minimize water loss and reduce costs, we have completed a leak detection project east of I-95. We inspected about 138 miles of water mains, found 14 locations of leaks with an estimated water loss of 17 million gallons a year. All leaks are repaired at this point. At the water plant, we have completed reverse osmosis project by replacing pumps and some of the equipment at the plant. And we have inspected over 50 manholes and repaired 10 manholes to minimize groundwater inflow into the sewer system. As for ongoing goals and projects, this computer maintenance management system, we have received 4 proposals, and we are in process of selecting the software. We should have this software available to us probably by this fall. To minimize groundwater flow into the sewer system, we are continuing the inspection and repair of sewers by point repair or lining. In fact, we are lining several sections of sewer lines in the middle of the city in the next couple of weeks. The master plan for water and wastewater is about 75% complete. We are working on developing details of short-term and long-term projects. The final report is scheduled to be completed by August, end of August. The Hillsboro water main replacement project, which replaces a water line going across the canal, is under construction. We are waiting for Corps of Engineer permit to start drilling and install the pipe. Should have this done by sometimes in October. The lime tank project at the treatment plant is also under construction. We are waiting for shop drawing approval and fabrication of parts. Fabrication is going to take a while, probably 4 to 5 months. We are thinking the project is going to get done sometimes next year, in May of next year. 1 million gallon storage tank is being advertised for rehab. We expect to receive bids and have it for commission approval in August. The advanced metering project, which will install the smart flow meters throughout the city. We have received 7 proposals, and our consultant is reviewing it to make a selection. We can proceed with it hopefully this year. East Water Treatment Plant site improvement, which demos existing abandoned equipment, is at purchasing, is waiting to be advertised for bid. We hope to award and start construction on it this year. Our goals for 2020 are very similar to what we have now. Minimizing infiltration to our sewer system. We pay approximately $5 to $6 million a year for treatment of wastewater. The reducing it is going to save us money, so we're continuing to try to find leaks and stop groundwater getting into our sewer system. Leak detection project, we had a good experience on east of I-95. We plan to do the same thing on the west of I-95. We find 17 million gallons of water. That's 2 days of water production for the plant that we've been losing every year. So this is a big saving for us to continue that project and keep moving there. The master plan, hopefully we'll have it finished by end of August. We are, next year, we're going to develop plans to implement the recommendation that they're putting in together and try to schedule it so we can afford what's going to be proposed. The line contact tank, I just talked about, that project will continue until next year, until next May. We hope to finish that by May. East water plant site improvement, same. It started this year, but it will continue to most of next year to be completed. We are planning to replace the station 25, which is on Southwest 12 across from Home Depot. It's one of the oldest pump stations we have. We are replacing it to support a new development, which is Deerfield Station. That was recently built there. That should be advertised this fall, and construction starts probably early January, and hopefully we can finish it up before the end of the year, next year. And we're going to continue with the advanced metering project. We started this year. We have to install approximately 13,000 water meters have to be reinstalled. That takes time. It's going to take a couple of years. Next year, we're going to continue with that project. And we have a project to replace our disinfection process at the plant, which is right now we use chlorine gas, which is pretty dangerous. The intention is to go to liquid, and that project is going to start design this year. We are in the process of selecting a consultant, and the budget for construction it's for 2021. This kind of summarizes the budget for all the utilities, kind of summarizes that overall you can see total reduction in pretty much every categories that we have. Other slides after this will kind of provide the details for individual line items.
If I may, just real quick, Alan, and as you see these enterprise funds with reductions in their budget, which is, you know, a prudent, responsible financial thing to do, it does have a negative effect on the general fund in terms of the administrative fee that comes back to the general fund. So when they have less expenditures, we get less revenue from the admin fee into the general fund. So as we talked yesterday about the revenues being lower than what they were in the previous year in the general fund, this is one of those reasons. I just wanted to point that out so you had an understanding.
As for operating budget for engineering is reduced for a total of about 22%. Personnel services reduced by 22% due to reallocation of IT personnel to general fund. Operating budget is reduced by 8%. Capital outlay is reduced by 19%. We still have budgeted for furnishing and some fixtures in 2020 in tune of $110,000. Water plant, overall budget change is minimum. It's pretty much like very similar to last year. Personnel cost is reduced by approximately 5%, and that's due to retirement of some of the experienced staff that we had. Operating expenditure has increased by about 25%, and that's for providing some of the project listed here, like arc flash study. This study needs to be done every 5 years. We haven't done it for a while, so that project needs to be scheduled and do it. And basically, what it does, the study will measure potential of arc flash at the plant with electrical equipment for safety of staff, and provides them with safety equipment so we know how to handle high voltage equipment as we deal with them. We also plan to repaint. We started the painting project at the water plant. We painted one of the buildings. We couldn't afford to do all of it in past. We're planning to finish that project totally, and also repaint the remaining structure in the east plant that is going to remain in place. We have also budgeted some money for generator switchgear replacement, and that's equipment that we need to replace. It's been outdated for a while. The chlorine gas scrubber is a chemical that we have to replace after so many years in case that we have gas leakage. That's the scrubber turns on and basically protects, is a safety equipment that has to be done. And our laboratory supplies are about $40,000 also included in that budget. The capital outlay is reduced. The reason for reduction is we are waiting for the master plan to kind of show us where we're going to go. And although we still have some money left for vehicle replacement, basically one truck and some laboratory equipment that needs to be replaced. Utility maintenance, overall budget is reduced by 5%. Staff personnel cost is 2.5, about 3% reduction. That's again for experienced people retirement. We have that savings. Operating expenditure 5% reduction is just a general across the board, nothing really specifically to point out to. And capital outlay, we also reduced that, and but we still have budget for hydrant replacement, rehabbing manholes, lift station equipment replacement, and 2 truck replacement in 2020. The sewer and water renewal replacement fund, again, we are showing reduction in this particular line item. That's, again, waiting for the master plan to show up and show us a little bit more of a line or investment in the future. We have many projects, and the list is very long. I'm going to go through some of them. For water system, we plan to continue with advanced metering project. We plan to replace a section of water lines that we know that they're restrictive and they're causing pressure problem in the system. That we're going to plan to reduce it. For wastewater system, we plan to, as I said, replace station 25 and continue reduction of groundwater into the sewer system by lining sewer lines. For water plants, the list goes 2 sheets. So, for water plant, we are rehabbing the wells. Our wells are been installed since late 80s, and they need to be rehabbed to get the water production out of them. So that's our plan for next year. Be replacing outdated pump drives, VFDs, and replacing communication system with remote well sites, the RTUs that are stationed there, and other improvements listed in here. As for future consideration, a significant part of our water system dates from 1960s and 70s. About 40% of our water mains are before 1980s, which means they are more than 50 years old. In order to keep ahead of any potential problem, we need to start a water main rehab and replacement program in the near future. As far as potential climate change that we discussed a little bit earlier, as a part of the master plan effort, we looked at what happens to our water and wastewater system. And a lot of our wastewater system in the barrier island gets flooded. And we need to start planning to see how we're going to harden those to plan for the future as we move forward. Master plan has developed a lot of improvement that we need to do. One of the items that they identified is projection of water need. In the future, we need to have another 1 million gallons of water after 2030. We're estimating that. At the same time, we are looking at the water wells on the east of I-95 with salt intrusion. We are not sure they're going to be available to us in long term. We had a meeting with South Florida Water Management, and they're aware of this effort that we are doing. And we need to put a plan to address this comprehensively and make sure that we have water after 2030 and 2035. And lastly, obviously, we need to plan and implement the asset management program to optimize management of our assets and minimize the cost of owning and operating them. And so simply developing an asset management plan to maintain our utilities at lowest life cycle cost.
And before we move on to construction and facilities management, I can pause for any questions related to anything that Alan went over.
Vice Mayor Drosky and then Commissioner Parnas.
The advanced metering, is that and if I don't have the terminology right, excuse me, but that's like the digital system. Instead of having the guy go door to door, it's a digital system that will electronically report the information, which will increase efficiency in reporting and in billing, I presume. Is that the system that we're talking about?
Exactly what it is. Basically, set up. There are several different kind of systems out there. One of them is...
Alan, if you could just get your mic for me, please, thank you.
There are several types of system available out there to use. One of them is drive-by. The other one is remote monitoring, basically with antennas and that type of infrastructure. We are leaning to go to that remote monitoring and no drive-by. That allows us to monitor all the water usage and to see what's really actually happening as we make water. Second thing, all the billing is going to be done fast and correct. And we actually can help some of our residents with regard to water use by allowing them to know what they're using, how much they're using, and such. The project, and at the same time, we have to remember that we have over 13,000 meters throughout the city. These meters are, most of them are probably close to 15 to 20 years old. A lot of them are very old. And no matter what we do, we have to replace those sooner or later. We've been maintaining them, but it's been a struggle. As a part of this project, not only we are automating them, we are replacing some of the older units. Approximately 70 to 80% of the meters will be replaced as part of this project.
And the 1.5 million number that was in your presentation, is that for the units themselves, the 13,000 units that we're talking about?
It's a combination of the technology and that. Obviously, we have infrastructure to be installed to be able to read these meters throughout the city. There will be location that picks up the signals from the meters that have to be installed throughout, and a computer system located someplace to collect that data, and also the meters.
And you said it would take a couple years to install all this. Are we installing them ourselves as a city, or are we having an outside vendor that could maybe do this faster?
We have an outside vendor to do it. However, we are not going to allow somebody to come in and run through it, get it done. The intention is to allow them to build some, let us test it, make sure it's working, and then we start moving ahead and doing it. The first phase of it would be to build approximately 500 units, make sure the system is operational and effective, and then allow them to proceed to do that. Changing 13,000 meters, it takes a while to do that. We have to go to every single house and do that individually and test it and move on. Right now, what we have done is we have received 7 proposals from different vendors. We are reviewing them to see how fast, how quickly they can get them done. But it's be done through outside sources.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Commissioner Parnas?
Yes, the 50-year-old or so pipes that the water, A, what are they made of? And B, what are we replacing them with?
Well, there are some of them are asbestos cement, pipes. There's nothing wrong with them health-wise, and don't worry about that part. But they're very brittle. They're very brittle, and over time they break and crack. Now we have found different types of pipe throughout the city. There's some place that we even have PVC pipe that we built on the west side, which is newer construction, but they build them right on top of rocks. So as soon as you turn the water on or water pressure changes, that thing moves, and we have problems there. We had over 100 leaks that we repaired up to now this year. And a lot of them are concentrated on problem areas such as that.
Please.
A lot of them are concentrated on the problem areas such as that the pipe is installed incorrectly, and we are paying the price of trying to keep it up and doing it. So there are 2 things looking at it. One is age by itself. We are looking at mostly barrier island area that we have asbestos pipe cements that are really brittle. And every time that we have a problem, there's a major work for us to do. Start repairing those or lining those. There's a process for us to line those also. Not necessarily you have to all replace them. And take a look at problem area and replace the pipes that are actually causing problems for us that we are spending so much time trying to maintain.
So what will the new pipes be made of?
It depends. For example, if you're putting it on rocks, I'm going to suggest to go with ductile iron pipes that will kind of take the load. If you're not putting it in that area, replacing asbestos cement pipes in that normal construction, then PVC pipes should do very well.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. I believe it was either last year or maybe the year before, we were looking at a large capital outlay for repairs to our water plant, and I
Yes.
don't see that here. Have we already done that? Is that
No,
coming in the future, or where are we at?
Well, the master plan has identified certain improvement we need to do at the water plant. Majority of our water plant system are built in late 90s, early 2000, and they're right now reaching the age of 20 years old. Our line system was built in 1980s, and we are struggling to keep it up. So the question is, how are we going to proceed forward? And there are certain options available to us. One is to replace the line plant with with the line plant with nanofiltration, and replace and upgrade the nanofiltration. That's one of the options that we are considering doing it. They are right now putting costs together so we can look at these things with cost, not just the process itself. So hopefully you have some more details in the near future.
Okay.
But right now, it's not on still. Yeah. Right now, any improvement to the plant is best for us to wait until we have the master plan in front of us so we have a better picture of it. The good part of it is that our plant has capacity of almost 20 million gallons a day, our production. Our peak use in the future is going to be close to 17 million gallons a day. So increase in production is not necessarily needed. Our water, the raw water available to us is only 14 million gallons. So we have a 3 million gallons gap that we have to deal with, and we are working to figure out how to do that exactly.
Okay. But there is no issue with our water quality or any of the operations that we have with that current plant?
No, we do not. As I mentioned, the first thing I started with water quality because I think it's a major concern on everybody's part. We spend a lot of our time testing water on a daily basis from the plant and outside. Our water quality, it's as good as everybody else around us. I would want to say even better.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Yes, Commissioner Hudak?
Quick question. Earlier you had stated that these PVC pipes were installed correctly. They were installed on rocks. Who installed them, and do we have any recourse in order to recoup some of this money?
I can't tell you who installed them, to be honest with you. They are built in 80s and 90s in that regard, and recouping is very difficult to do. However, we have engineering helping us from now on, and every time there's a water line put in, we make sure that it's installed correctly, has the right bedding for us. Because part of the problem is that if you go to the west side, we have a lot of problems that you hear about water breaks are related to probably 2 or 3 water lines. And that caused us, at least on one of them, we have 3 breaks in this year. And it's a 12-inch water line. It's not a small water line but those are part of the problem that was during the construction, especially private development that occurred. A lot of service lines were put in that way. That means they really didn't spend time to try to do it right. They ran it at the best they could, and a lot of them are sitting on rocks. And that's every time that water pressure changes, that thing moves, and pretty soon you have a break.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll move over to the construction facilities management portion of the presentation. Just as a reminder, we've moved construction facilities management into the environmental services department for the proposed FY20 budget.
Good evening. My name is Steve Zelnicki. I'm the capital projects engineer. Summary of the fiscal year 19 achievements would be the Constitution Park Pavilion was reconstructed to meet ADA requirements. The Center for Active Aging design criteria package is complete, and we have, of course, selected the 3 qualified teams to move forward. Johnny Tigner Center design criteria narrative is substantially complete. The City Hall renovation design criteria package is also substantially complete, and a preventative maintenance program for the HVAC systems throughout the buildings in the city was implemented. Some of the items in progress for this year are continuing, of course, with the Center for Active Aging. The request for proposal package will be provided to the 3 qualified teams. That's being prepared right now. The architect is brushing up on finalizing that document. Johnny Tigner Center request for qualified design build team is pending. The West Community Center renovations, there's a proposal we're waiting from the architect to perform design on some renovations at that building, so that'll be a standard design, bid, and build. The Constitution Park Arboretum Phase 2, right now we're in the preliminary stages of construction preparation and getting documents in order for them to move forward with that and build it. Some goals for fiscal year 20 for Center for Active Aging. We want to finalize the design-build team selection and move towards construction. Johnny Tigner Center, we will advertise to select the design-build team and conduct community participation workshops, and then, of course, construct the improvements. City Hall renovation, we have to conduct the requests for qualified design-build teams, eventually negotiate the proposal with the selected design-build team, and construct those improvements as well. We started with the preventative maintenance with the HVAC, so we want to improve and expand upon those programs for major building systems such as elevators, generators, and plumbing. And we have a newly redesigned lifeguard tower design, so we'll start with constructing one in the north end of the beach. The operating budget on the personal services, that went down a little bit, primarily due to a freeze of an unfilled facility tech position that we didn't need to fill. The operating expenditures, there's an apparent decrease of 67%, but that's because the electric, water, and sewer fees have been moved to a different account. So it's no longer recognized in this department. Capital outlay for capital improvement projects will go up a bit due to some of these projects here, the fire station renovations for ADA and safety compliance, main beach restroom renovations, constructing of the one lifeguard tower that I mentioned, and right now that damaged center dock at Pioneer Park, we want to fix that. And so that will be a little bit more, that's why we have a 53% increase there, but a total decrease of 46%. Looking ahead beyond fiscal year 20, the condition of various buildings and other capital infrastructure will require proposed improvements or replacements. That's an ongoing thing that you would expect with the aging of the facilities. Most fire stations require major renovations or new construction. The remainder of the Pioneer Park dock should be completed, repaired or replaced. Various park structures throughout the city and restrooms require major renovations as well. And to get that, we'll need we'll be dedicating a capital funding for 5-year CIP program to achieve those goals. That's it.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Do you have a more specific timeline, excuse me, on that West Community Center? It's in my district, and I get questions all the time, especially from the homeowners associations that now have to go over to Constitution Park, and it's kind of a free-for-all for them to schedule their meetings when that might be back online again?
Any day now I expect to get this revised proposal. The architects have been making some changes. And once we get that, we're ready to approve that and get them started. The design, it's modifying an early design, so I don't anticipate that to be very long, within the next few months.
Okay. And then I'd like to go back. Commissioner Hudak actually stole my question. I saw him peeking at my notes, but
Pretty good from what we did.
with respect to the installation of the pipes and what may have been installed improperly, I think the point is well taken. And if we don't know who installed them, I suggest that we find out, because Mr. Soroka has an office full of bright young, men and women that would love to explore that option further on our behalf. And if there are others besides the city who are responsible, I would not want to give them a free pass, because this is going to cost us some big dollars.
I would say on that, considering it dates back to the 80s and 90s, we might be, I'm not sure how worthwhile it's going to be, because some of the installations might have been done by our staff. So unless it's clear cut that we've got a vendor that we could go after, even with that amount of time, it would be, it might be daunting, but probably worthwhile. So, well, questionably worthwhile, but we'll find out. Commissioner Preston?
In regard to the Johnny Tigner Center, I forget the outlay of the plans for that, but does it go upstairs? Is it going to be upstairs to that?
Yes, it's proposed to be a 2-story building.
Okay, and on the first floor, what's would be primarily the events that would be held there?
So the first floor will be all the programming and public access, with the second floor being for administrative offices. It's not designed yet. It's just a very limited design criteria package purposely, so that when we engage the procurement process on this, and we're having those interested parties, those design build teams in that procurement process, at that point we will engage the community so that those design build teams can get that community input and get a better understanding of what this thing should look like at the end.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, one quick question. With regards to the repair for the fire stations, what are our goals for this year? Because I know that there were some goals last year that were pushed back into this year, so I'd like to know what it is we plan on doing to improve those fire stations.
I recall some ADA issues where there was not there was the inappropriate egress from the building.
Egress, yeah.
So that's some of it there. There's exhaust systems and alerting systems.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, if I can, I'll follow up on the Vice
Sure.
Mayor's point and your point as well. It's certainly something our office could take a look at, and we could just do a preliminary analysis to see the viability of any such claim. There will probably be some statute limitation hurdles and things we can analyze and get back to you for relatively reasonable fee to look into it and explore whether it's really worth it. Some of the challenges I think you and the mayor both raised are legitimate, but as you mentioned, we do have some very bright lawyers, and so we can look into it. Thanks.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. And now we can move on to sustainable management. I'd ask that Ocean Rescue come up and take their place here.
Okay, good evening, and thank you very much. My name is Chad Gressick. I'm the Director of Sustainable Management. I appreciate the opportunity to present our fiscal year 2020 budget to you. But before we get into that, if we could go through some of our accomplishments of this past year. Obviously, the Artificial Reef Project you've heard a lot about. I certainly want to thank those individuals in the room tonight that helped to fix the glitch with the county in regards to the funding discrepancies. So we're going to move on that project full steam ahead. We hope to initiate construction, or at least the meetings with the agencies shortly after the 4th of July holiday. This year we also initiated our coastal management plan process, and we're currently in the development phase of that, where we're getting public input on that process and on that plan, so that we make sure that we get what the public wants to see on our beaches and how our beaches will look in the future. As you're aware also that we did complete a investment grade audit citywide that was delivered to the city in March, conducted by Siemens. As you are aware, this project is on a bit of a hiatus at the moment. We did have a favorable phone call with Siemens representatives today, which indicate that this is moving in the right direction. So we will continue to update the City Commission on the status of that situation as we move forward. As we continue to transition our billing into our tower solid waste management system, we've seen a lot of billing enhancements. We've seen some revenue capture and some accounts that hadn't been billed for quite some time. We also initiated a stop service service where individuals, if they're not paying their account and they're delinquent, We issue a stop service, and that gets them to pay pretty quickly. So we've seen about a 13% reduction in delinquencies just through initiating that process. Next slide, please. Our goals for next year, obviously, we want to complete the management plan for the coastal aspects of our city. You heard Environmental Services talk about the various master plans that they're conducting. So this coastal management plan will dovetail nicely with that. In addition to that management plan, we're also hopefully with Siemens, assuming they are approved, we'll be embarking on a sustainability management plan for the city. So all those things combined will be essentially our response to climate change and the impacts of that. So you're touching upon, your stormwater, your water quality, your water quantity, your coastal aspects, as well as policies going forward. We hope to initiate our performance contracting projects later this summer. We hope to bring that back before the City Commission in August. And that will be a full-scale event, approximately $10 million project, estimated to save the city about $15 million over 17 years. We are also looking to improve our fleet maintenance program. As you may have heard in the past, we do suffer from challenges that the rest of the industry is suffering from. It's getting qualified mechanics and getting them to stay with the city. Unfortunately, mechanics, when they find an opportunity that may pay a dollar or two more, they're fairly quick to jump to those opportunities. And like I said, it's becoming more and more difficult, number one, for us to find mechanics, but also to retain them. So that's going to be a challenge. And we do believe we have some management strategies in place that we're going to hopefully address those concerns. Recycling contamination, we continue to chip away at that issue. We did give a report update at the last City Commission meeting. Unfortunately, the processing costs continue to increase exponentially. However, we're doing our best to try to reduce some of the volume, some of the tonnage, which will hope to bring down that overall expense. One of the main things that we're going to need to look at as a goal for next year is the rates for our services. And as you heard from the Chief Financial Officer last night, we are an enterprise fund, and enterprise funds are required to cover the cost of their services. And as you'll see in some of the slides ahead, we are no longer doing that. So currently, our expenses are exceeding our revenues. This has been a trend that's occurred for over the last 4 years. It's averaged about $700,000 in net position loss. And as I mentioned, the enterprise fund is required to cover its costs for the services it provides. The residential service rate was last adjusted downwards in 2015 to match some of the market conditions that were transpiring at that time. Unfortunately, however, our operational costs and processing costs and other costs have gone up about 2% on average over that period. And certainly you are well aware of the increases in the recycling processing costs. So with a rate adjustment, obviously we can maintain our what everybody likes to call our Cadillac level of service. The residents truly enjoy the level of service that we provide. We'd like to continue to provide those levels of service. A rate adjustment will allow us to address these cost increases and allow us to bring the fund back into a net neutral position. Next slide, please. So this is what I alluded to before. So since 2015, in 2015 you can see this shows our revenues and expenses. In 2015 we're pretty much even. And this coincides nicely with when we reduced our residential rate. You can see that impact started to be felt in addition to the increases in the operational costs, which continued to create a net position loss. Obviously, the 2019 revenues and expenses are estimated at this time, and the 2020 obviously are proposed. So we certainly hope that the 19 numbers aren't as bad as they look there. However, we won't know that information until the CAFR is completed and all that information becomes actual. Next slide, please. So what we wanted to do in this slide was really illustrate what our rate is doing in relation to the Consumer Price Index. And the Consumer Price Index is important because several of our large expense items are tied directly to that index. Our disposal fees adjust every year based on CPI, as well as our processing fees for recycling adjust. And as you can see here, the City Commission did a great job of almost nailing the decrease with the decrease in the CPI in 2015. However, the rate remained flat over that period of time to where we are today when the CPI rates obviously inflated. And we used a fairly conservative blend of a CPI rate. Some of them are a lot higher than that, so we blended it to give you a conservative figure there. So if we were to use CPI and project it from where we were in 2015, our rate would be $25.24 today. Next slide, please. So this slide, what we wanted to do is really get into the rate and break it down into components. What makes up that residential curbside rate? And what we were able to do is we broke out all of our expenses. We were able to allocate the expenses associated with the residential curbside collection, and then we were able to take a percentage of that total cost or that total expense and break that down as to a total expense of those services. And as you can see in the table here, we are recommending a rate adjustment to $25 a month from $22.34, which is a $2.66 increase per month, or about a $32 increase per year. The residential curbside service is a very expense-heavy service for our fund. It's 66% of the total expense for the solid waste fund. And by illustrating the fund and the expense in this manner, we believe it gives you a more transparent way to see where those expenses lie, and it provides greater flexibility in adjusting the rate dependent upon what these components do. So for example, should disposal go up, that component obviously would go up. Should disposal go down, that component can go down, and so on and so forth. So again, this will allow us, when we bill our residents, they could see exactly what makes up that rate. And just to go through those, just so we're completely clear, sanitation are the services that are provided, the litter cleanup throughout the city, the beach cleanup, the special event assistance. Disposal is basically disposal costs for our municipal solid waste. Our collection are the costs associated with collecting our municipal solid waste and our bulk. And our recycling are the costs associated with the collection and the processing. Next slide. From the multifamily and commercial side, obviously, we again want to maintain the same level of service. We do believe that some changes are needed in these areas of business as well. Specifically in the multifamily realm, we need to adjust the rates. We need to implement charges for recycling as well as bulk collection. From the commercial standpoint, we are looking at a rate increase of 5% to those figures. We are looking to adjust recycling costs so that processing fees are covered, the increasing processing costs are covered. And ultimately, we are looking to bring our rates more in line with what the industry charges, however, still be the lowest cost provider. So what that means is basically, right now, recycling is an open market. Any business that's registered in our recovered materials program, they can come into the city and provide a level of service. Our rates will still be lower than theirs, but the residents will have the opportunity, and the businesses will have the opportunity to choose them if they should want to. We're also looking at adding an administrative charge to our commercial billing and multifamily billing. That's essentially just to address some costs that we incur from billing and finance, from putting the charges through. And we're also looking to add the charge for sanitation as well, because we do believe that the businesses and multifamilies contribute to the litter, the garbage, and the other things that our sanitation division cleans up throughout the city. Next slide, please. So if you look at our solid waste fund expense, we are looking at about a 3.1% increase. And what we wanted to do this year Again, to ensure maximum transparency, is we've included a line item related to capital reserves, and that essentially captures, from the expense side, your depreciation expense for your equipment. You know, we're a very heavy equipment user, and those expenses need to be covered from an accounting standpoint. And from the revenue side, we capture them as a capital reserve. Next slide. So to the specific division of recycling solid waste, operational costs are going up, fuel costs are going up. We do hope with the construction of a CNG station, if the Siemens project is approved, some of those costs will be mitigated. But obviously disposal and processing costs will continue to go up because there's escalators in those contracts, and they will go up every year. Capital equipment, we are looking to purchase 2 automated side load vehicles. Those are the vehicles that service our curbside customers. We have had a lot of breakdowns, unfortunately, recently with the extreme heat and what these vehicles do every day. I mean, that arm is basically lifting 1,000 times a day. So there's a lot of fatigue. The heat definitely causes these pieces of equipment to break down. And unfortunately, once the arm goes down, that truck is useless. So it does put a bit of a crimp into our operations when those trucks go down. So we definitely need to keep those in and new and replace those, typically on about an 8-year cycle. We are also looking to bring a larger capacity bulk collection truck in, which will allow us to address our bulk collection issues a little bit more efficiently, but it also can be used for hurricane cleanup. And, obviously, we hope we don't have to use it for that, so we still have an operational use on the bulk side should we need to, have that on staff for us. We're also looking to add some additional garage doors, or new garage doors, rather, for our fleet garage. Some of those are original, and those get beat up quite a bit through some of the storms that we've had. They're not operating as they need to, so they need to be replaced. Next slide. From the sanitation division, this division, every year, the workload increases. We thought this was going to be a variable type of workload, where special events and certain times of the year where the beach was a little bit more busy, but unfortunately, the beach is always busy these days, and there's more and more special events every year. So this division necessitates additional personnel. So what we're looking to do here is to eliminate the will call program and actually bring in 3 full-time positions, and that has resulted in the cost increase there. Next slide, please. So in addition to the solid waste fund, I do oversee several divisions in the general fund, those being the coastal and waterway division, as well as the fleet management division. We can go into those in more specifics next slide. So from the coastal and waterway division aspect, yep, go ahead, Dave.
So one of the things that you'll notice is the increase in the personnel services for the coastal and waterways division, and that is because the 2 employees within that division were being funded by the solid waste fund. But in all actuality, all of what they do is not related to solid waste and or recycling. There's more of a, for one of the positions, more emphasis on the coastal aspect of things, beach renourishment projects, coastal management plans, the artificial reef, so on and so forth, while the other individual in the personnel services does do about 50% of their time in the recycling arena and the rest of it in other things like, again, the coastal management, the bee aviary, and those sorts of sustainability programs. So it was just appropriate to right-size the costs related to those personnel services.
Thanks, Dave. And as you can see, the operating expenditures have gone down significantly here. This is obviously not something that's ideal, and is something that we're going to have to address in our coastal management plan as to how we fund our beach projects, how we fund our beach programs. There's a lot of things out there. Obviously, we need to do a beach nourishment. Obviously, we have an ongoing litigation with the town of Hillsboro. So there may be some expenses there that the budget as of right now would not be able to cover. Next slide. From the fleet management side, we have had some senior personnel retire, so we've seen some salary attrition there in regards to bringing in newer, lower-level fleet mechanics, so that's reduced the personal services costs. We're also reducing some of our operating expenditures, which results in about 11% decrease in that total budget. Next slide. So our future considerations, as I mentioned, we have to talk about climate change. We have to work towards what the city's approach is going to be in that regard. And I think, as we mentioned, there are a number of master plans underway to address the variety of impacts that climate change can cause. So I think the city's going to be in a much better position come this time next year in regards to providing some real solid recommendations on where we go. The coastal management plan, we hope to present that to you in the fall. And again, a big component of that is going to be how we fund some of the projects that need to be conducted down at the beach to make sure that our beach is the best beach in Broward County. Retaining and hiring qualified mechanics, one of the things we've done is we've modified some of the criteria in the job descriptions, and that's actually yielded some positive benefits. So we're going to have to continue to tweak those job descriptions and those requirements in order to attract additional mechanics, and also look at some incentives that we might be able to provide. I'm not sure if that's something we can do, but we have to start to think outside the box because we need mechanics. Our trucks go down, and our fleet garage has done a phenomenal job of keeping this equipment up so that it hasn't caused a major impact in service delivery. We need to continue to address the recycling volatility. We have a multi-pronged approach on that. Education outreach, code enforcement, bringing those types of facilities that are not compliant out of the system, and hopefully reducing the volume there. And again, going back to the education outreach, targeted education outreach, going out to the specific facilities that are contaminating and doing our best to educate them. And if they don't, finding a way to minimize the impact of that to the program. And last but not least, obviously, the solid waste fund sustainability, making sure that the fund gets back into a net neutral position, and ideally down the road can start to create a real good solid reserve fund, which could then be used for hurricane-related expenses, emergency expenses, as well as any potential capital projects related to solid waste down the road. So with that, I think that's it, and I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Commissioner Preston.
On the first page, it was about the artificial reef. It was $150,000 commitment from Broward County.
Yes.
What was the total cost of that?
$355, as Pat tells me, crossed.
And so we get $150,000 from Broward County?
We got $150,000 from Broward County. We also had a $30,000 grant from Florida Sea Grant. So,
Okay. And the remaining comes from where?
from the Coastal Fund, from Pat's division.
Okay. Okay.
And what was the estimated revenue return on that for having that type of?
I think it's 4 to 1 typically. When you put in an artificial reef, the studies have suggested a 4 to 1 return, which is pretty good.
Excellent. Thank you.
I have another question.
Yes, Commissioner Preston.
The elimination of the 7 will call positions and add 3 full-time. When would you look to implement that?
As soon as possible. This is actually a recommendation we had last year that was removed at the last minute, and it's definitely causing operational impacts. So as soon as we can get that, obviously October 1st, be in a position with human resources to have those job descriptions all set, which we do, and get those filled as soon as possible.
Okay.
Commissioner Farnes, and then Vice Mayor Drosky, and then Commissioner.
I have 2 questions. What will this artificial reef be made of? A sunken ship, rocks, what?
Limestone boulders.
Limestone boulders, okay. That doesn't seem very expensive compared to Rapa Nui. Second, we all know the ocean's rising, and I see beach renourishment, et cetera, et cetera. What's being done to protect the beach?
That's a great question, and that's something that we really hope to delve into in the beach management plan. You know, what are some strategies that other coastal communities utilize to address that concern? Vegetation is one, seawalls, you know, there's a variety of different measures that can be used, and we're going to present all those to the commission once that management plan is drafted.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Can you go back to the residential rate slide? It's towards the beginning. So the slide after, which you don't have to go to, said that, you know, proposed was to start charging, you know, multifamily. Was that contemplated when looking at the new proposed rate of $25, and including them in as well?
Yes,
So if you weren't to include them, that rate would be a lot higher.
correct. And I neglected to mention, you may have seen in the newspaper over the weekend that Fort Lauderdale's rate went up 25%, or at least they're recommending a 25% increase. So their rate went from about $32 a month, it's going to $40 a month. And I don't know what their level of service is, but it's probably not as high as ours.
Well, I mean, just to talk about that too, I mean, I'm thinking, you know, during your presentation, ways to potentially save or you know, make some savings during all of this. And, you know, we're used to the Cadillac service here in Deerfield Beach, so I don't think cutting bulk is going to get us anywhere, because the residents are going to, there'll be a coup from the residents. They're used to their weekly bulk, and
As my staff laughs.
you can't take away. You can add, but you can't take away. So that really isn't an option. But with these two side loader machines, is there any possible route integration? I mean, you and I talked when I was first elected that, you know, that's where a lot of cost savings comes in, is being able to consolidate, you know, the routes. Are we any closer today?
Yeah, well, we went from, you know, a lot more, we dropped about 11 routes from when I inherited the operation about 6 years ago. So we've pretty much right-sized as much as we're going to get at this point. There may be some additional opportunities, but when trucks go down, obviously, that throws it all out the window. And we do have some aging trucks that we need to get replaced. So in a perfect world, we probably could drop another route, but with our current truck situation and trucks being down, and then you have personnel, you have somebody out, you have somebody sick, usually we're never in a perfect operating situation, so we always like to have extra. But yeah, when we can run less routes, we absolutely do.
I mean, because I would just like to suggest that we look at all possibilities and going forward before raising the rate. You know, you're going to have to make your best case, just like the city manager did with the fire fee. You're going to have to make your best case as to why this rate needs to be increased, and that there's no alternatives to save. You know, that this is the only way to go, that there's not other opportunities that are out there. So be prepared when coming forward to address those questions. That's all I have for now.
Commissioner Hudak?
Same slide, so I'm glad we're there. Recycling, 13%. What contamination rate is that based on? Because we know it's going up.
Yeah, we used a lesser rate. I mean, we're using about a $53 per ton rate. But as you saw the other night, it could go as high as 75, maybe even higher. So, you know, that's not capturing all that potential expense. So what we are hoping to do, again, is to mitigate some of that by reducing some of the volume, pulling some of that volume out. So the more properties and accounts we pull out, the less that volume is, and hopefully that'll equalize to some degree. We are auditing multifamily, we are auditing commercial, and we're seeing about 74% contamination rate. So we're pulling those containers out when we conduct 3 consecutive audits and find that they're contaminated or excessively contaminated. We are notifying the account holder and advising them that, this material is not recyclable, and therefore it will not continue to be serviced as a recyclables.
I think we need to be diligent on that because it's affecting everybody.
We are, and we are going to start the residential side. Obviously, the residential side, we're going to have to work with the areas to really address the contamination because, we really can't remove them from the system because it's part of their bill as it stands right now.
If I may.
There was something about a whole bunch of accounts that weren't being billed.
Second slide, please.
The second slide, if we can go to the second slide. Yeah, that is 186 accounts, the previous slide that you were at. There we go.
Yep, so the county bills a portion of our city. The annexed area is serviced by the county's water services. And as it stands right now, our solid waste bills are provided on the water bill. So the county actually bills a portion of our city through their water bill. And they charge us for that. And what we found when we brought those addresses into our system, that they weren't capturing all the addresses that were out there. So we were able to audit and identify, 186 accounts, including one of our drivers who lives in the city who hadn't been paying for garbage since he lived there. So we fixed that glitch. And we continue to audit those accounts and address those issues as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Parnas.
Part of my constituency, of course, is the village that has 353 multi-dwelling buildings. If you're going to pick up containers for their non-recycling cooperation, have they been notified?
So we just began auditing Century Village about a month ago. So we still have a lot more work to do there. And we have a very good relationship with Master Management, so we will be in very close communication with them when we're at that point. However, we are seeing, unfortunately, the high trends of contamination, 74, 75%. We are going to put the stickers, as you requested, out on some of those containers to, again, educate or attempt to educate the population out there. Again, we're seeing the plastic bags for the most part, where individuals are carrying the material down and they're just tossing it all into the dumpster. Fortunately, that's considered contamination right off the bat. So
Master Management is even offering anybody who comes to their office a carry cloth bag to bring it down and bring it back to their home. We just have a lot of people that don't care, and that's sad. So I'm glad you're working with Master Management, as I am, and we'll see what we can do to improve it, and if not, it's not.
Chad, a couple things. I'm going to go back to the solid waste fund slide with the historical proposed revenue and expenses. Go back to that slide. So the comment was made in 2015, we did a rate reduction. And then immediately after that, we started to watch our revenues not keep up with our expenses. In 2015, the reason we did a rate reduction is because we had a massive savings in what our tipping fees were. And there was great debate at the time sitting up here that some of that needed to go back to the residents. I find it disturbing that immediately as we did that, because we bragged about what a great savings we did, and it was a tremendous amount, there was also debate at the time that we went ahead and added 5 permanent, I believe it was 5 permanent positions in this city. And yet, right at that time, as soon as we did the rate reduction, which should have happened, suddenly our expenses start shooting up. And now we want to go ahead and get rid of 7 will-call positions and put in 3 full-time positions. Every time we add these full-time positions, that is an expense with the amount of pay that they get paid and with our benefit package, that to me signifies where some of the problems we're having with some of these expenses getting out of control. You've got 7 will call positions that obviously don't have the same benefit package. It seems to me would be a lot cheaper to have than these full-time positions that we continue to add. I don't understand. I actually have a hard time believing that this is so volatile after that giant decrease that we got in our tipping fees in 2015, where a lot of cities didn't get what we got. And we passed on savings to the residents, and that was the catalyst that caused this to be uneven. I believe that adding more full-time positions in this department has caused some of this.
No, you're absolutely right. I think it was a combination of the reduction in revenue, which was done through the rate decrease, the creation of the sanitation division, which was an increase in expense, and then on top of that, there were the increasing operational costs of approximately 2%. So all those things considered in tandem brought us to the reality that we're at today.
Okay, well, the revenue reduction, I don't see where it happened, because according to your slide here, the revenues continued to go up. The problem was our expenses outpaced it, right? The lighter green to the left.
Operational expenses went up, absolutely.
Yeah, so the revenues still continue to go up despite the rate reduction, but our expenses have gone up. And I'm not in favor of doing this adding 3 more permanent positions and eliminating will call. If the will call system isn't working, maybe it's just the will call individuals we have working in that position. I'm having a hard time understanding it. So I would like to talk to you more.
Sure,
and get a better
absolutely.
understanding of this. At this point right now, something just doesn't seem right here. It doesn't make sense to me. I understand there's some volatility, especially in the recycling division. I get that. And that has been a complete game changer, and that's a completely different world from where we're at, and that I can completely understand. Some of this other stuff here doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and I would like some further explanation before I would sign off on something like this. Okay? I will say this also, I do want to thank Commissioner Drosky. I understand he made a phone call to Commissioner Lamar Fisher. I know I spoke to Mayor Bogan today. Both Mayor Bogan and Commissioner Fisher prevented the county from playing a little game that they did in which they reduced it to $75,000. After agreeing, the county commission agreed unanimously to give us the $150,000. I believe it was a division under the county and a former commissioner's maybe vendetta against us for doing that change back in 2015 that caused them to try to say that they're only going to give us $75,000. But I do want to thank Mayor Bogan and Commissioner Fisher for making sure that the county did us right and gave us the full $150,000. So, Vice Mayor, thank you for making that phone call if you did actually do it, from what I hear. So thank you for that. I believe that's it. You have something, Commissioner?
Yes, thank you. Wanted you to elaborate a little bit more why you need those full-time positions.
Sure.
Because if you need them, I think you should get them.
Sure, and I have an instance that I can tell you that just happened over this past weekend. So, when you're dealing with will calls, you're dealing with individuals that, their schedules are variable. And typically they're not as bought in as a full-time employee. And there's certain things that we can't allow them to do because they're not full-time employees. They can't drive equipment, they can't do certain things. So that limits what we can have them do, number one. Number two, because we could will call, and that individual may not be available, the next one comes in. And what we found this past weekend was that we had a will call that was emptying containers at the beach, and they were mixing all the material together. Well, obviously, a resident or a visitor saw that. They contacted the city, and they asked the will call, hey, what are you doing? And they said, oh, we're just collecting it all together and we're sorting it later on. Well, that's not true. And those are the types of, that's just one instance where, we have this issue And this is the beach. You know, we want to make sure that when we have individuals at the beach, that they are, you know, they know our policies, they know our procedures, they are in tune with the city's regulations. They can drive equipment. They can do all the things that a full-time employee can do, as opposed to a will call that may be one person one week and another different person the next week. So that's really the main reason. And you know, I'd be happy to meet with anybody to go through that with Mr. Sullivan, who's the, you know, oversees that division, and he can certainly get into more detail as to why he's recommending those changes.
What would you do if you needed a will call person and that personnel wasn't available? You would next go to the next person, correct? But if you go through that list and you can't get anybody and that's needed, what happens then?
Yeah, we have to bring somebody else in and do overtime, and there's additional expenses.
So there's a cost there?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, and using that example, I find to me, that's a problem with management and less the individual. I'll be perfectly honest with you. If you've got will call people that are that inept, they can't do that, maybe you just need to change those people out and maybe do a better job of managing them, rather than tell me that you're going to break, because I've seen plenty of full-time people make some pretty boneheaded mistakes in this division as well. So I'm not buying that, quite frankly. Now, I understand a little bit about the availability, and I certainly understand that maybe they're not as bought in as they should be, but I think we could find people that would be bought in and be happy to have a job. But I believe that that has more to do with management than it has to do with the actual, whether they're a full-time or part-time position. Now, their availability, that's a good point. I understand that, and that makes a little bit more sense. But I'm not buying the fact that this guy went around and doubled it up. If he was a full-time employee, he wouldn't have done that. No, that's a failure of management, in my opinion.
I would say if I was a will call person, and you can, maybe the point I'm going to make here is not valid, but it may be valid, that if I'm a will call person, eventually, after working that, I'm going to ask you probably for a full-time position. Does that happen or not?
No, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, so I'm not going to be satisfied being a will call forever. I'm trying to better myself, and the only way that I can do that to get a good job, benefits, is that I be a full-time employee. And so if we never address it, the turnover with the will call could be there when we know that all the will call people are eventually going to ask for a full-time job.
What do you pay your will call people?
$14 an hour, I believe. In that range. That was $14.89.
Question. Your will call system, I'm very familiar with it. In the hotel business, our banquet bartenders were all, I'd have to call them in when we had a banquet. Do you find a great deal of people who are not available on that list?
Yes.
Well, then you need a new list.
Yeah, and again, I think, you know, when we initially implemented the will call system, you know, the work was part-time. But, you know, what's happened over the last several years is the work has become full-time. You know, the litter requests have gotten greater, additional special events, the beach requires greater attention. So all of that has also resulted in why Mr. Sullivan's making this recommendation.
How many will call people do you have?
7.
7. Suppose you had 9. You don't pay them unless you call them in, right?
True.
Let's assume you had 10. Do you work it where the senior man gets called first? How does it work?
I believe he's got a process. I don't know the details of how he goes through the call list. Obviously, there's certain will calls that he depends on and are a little bit more available and reliable than some others. However, you know, what we found through the will call system is that, you know, these employees, once they're brought on, and to your point, Mayor, when there are disciplinary issues, we have to treat them like a full-time employee. You know, they have to go through progressive discipline, whereas we were under the understanding that if there was an issue, we just didn't call them anymore. but we have to go through the progressive discipline. So that's bogged the system down as well, because we absolutely have addressed some of these employees that have habitual issues. But what's happened is we've got to go through the same process of progressive discipline, a verbal, and so on and so forth. And, that becomes a bit of a management issue as well, because that becomes now you're managing the HR aspect instead of them being out and doing the job that they need to do.
And I understand that. And I'm going to temper my statement, and I'm not trying to say that this is a mismanaged department. I hope my statements don't come across that way. But fixing that problem is something that management should be able to do without having to hire somebody full-time. I think that's more my point than trying to, if I sounded aggressive in attacking you, and whoever happens to be in charge of that can be handled through management. Yes, progressive discipline would probably have to be in place, and I think that's probably the right thing to do, and that's fine. But what you don't have is this long-term liability that at the cost that it hits us with is problematic. And what's going to happen, and I will warn everybody here in this city, especially the employees who work in that division, if the escalating costs and the decisions that we make continue to go up, you're going to get it to a point somewhere in the future, probably when I'm not sitting up here, years down the road, but you're going to start looking at privatization of this entire department. Because the cost to do it and the way we're doing it is going to exceed our ability to be competitive with other cities when it comes to what kind of services we provide. And at some point, we need to start thinking about that. And I would prefer us to not go that route. So we need to make decisions. They're going to make sure it's sustainable in the long term. But when we had a tremendous savings in 2015, to sit there and watch it skyrocket the way it did, even though revenues continue to grow, something's not right. Something doesn't make sense to me. So I just hope everybody considers that.
Thank you, Chad. We'll go on to ocean rescue presentation. I'll ask that fire rescue come over to the other side. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commission. I'm Chief Mike Brown. To my right is Lieutenant Phil DeBello, and to my left is Lieutenant Scott Kaplan. Go over some of our achievements for fiscal year 19. We were proud to be named the 2018 Florida Beach Patrol of the Year by the Florida Beach Patrol Chiefs Association. We also had our lifeguard Roman Stromangler named Lifeguard of the Year by the state, which is an honor. I believe we're the first agency ever to win both awards in the same year. So that's something we take a lot of pride in. Our competition team was ranked top 5 in the nation last year, and so far we're undefeated locally. One of our goals last year was to be recognized as one of the elite squads in the nation, and I think we're doing so. And by establishing that status, it's making our hiring process a lot more competitive. We're getting a lot of people that are out here for the profession and not just for a job. Installation of our vessel exclusion buoys. This is something that I've been advocate for several years, and I'd like to give special thanks to Patrick Bards for actually getting it through the commission, and we have them out there now, and I plan on showing you a slide next that shows with the addition of these buoys, the impact it's had. We updated our water rescue certification. In the past, we've just gone by the minimum of the Red Cross lifeguarding certification, which is more geared towards a pool lifeguard. We sent our lifeguard specialists, our 3 specialists, which are supervisors, to the USLA Officer Training Academy, and they've formed our own Deerfield chapter now, in which we put on new hires through a 40-hour course curriculum, and we've already established all of our current employees. So we're putting our standards more to open water, surf rescue, life-saving. And with the addition of our boat that we got last year, we've been able to rapidly respond to all emergencies, a lot of issues on the outer reef, and as you know, being in between 2 inlets, we have a lot of boat traffic, so we're pretty proud of these accomplishments. Next slide. I gave you some of our basics with statistics here. The first one I wanted to show you with water rescues. If you notice, the last 2 years, our water rescues have increased. We're estimated at 182 this year. I personally feel this is
greatly due to Hurricane Irma coming through. Ever since Hurricane Irma came through, it really changed the bottom of our beach. And now with minimal winds out of the east, we have a number of rip currents that pop up. So this is something that, we have to pay attention to with more storms coming. We've had storms in the past when Francis and Katrina came through that one year. We actually gained sand on our beach, and it made it more of a safe area. Now Irma came through 2 years ago, and we're having a lot more rescues. So, as you know, it's Mother Nature, things change. So we're on a growing trend of water rescues. I also wanted to show you in relation to the vessel exclusion buoys, as you can see how dramatically our boat vessel intrusions have lowered, making it a safer environment for our bathers. Next slide. Some of our goals moving forward to fiscal year 2020, update our beach ordinances to keep pace with both land and water recreational activities. I've been working with Anthony Soroka the last 2 years. I think we're pretty much ready to approach the commission for approval hopefully this year with some updated beach ordinances. A lot of our ordinances date back, longer than I've been with the city. So we like to purchase a drone this year. I think this can be very helpful, beneficial when we have large holiday events, we have missing persons on the beach, and to monitor water activity out there. So that's like an added benefit to us with the growing technologies out there. We like to replace our current wave runner. Most ocean rescue agencies we've agreed that life expectancy for ATVs, wave runners, any vehicles out there in the salt environments, usually around 5 years. And in the last 2 years, we've paid over $5,000 in repairs for our current wave runner. So, it's about time that we're due to get a new one out there. And then lastly, construction of the North Tower to account for the increased activity on our north area of the beach there. We have one tower to the north, and that's probably our most populated area. So we have a lot of unguarded area going towards county line. And that's something we've been bringing up the last couple of years in front of you guys. Next, looking at our budget. As you can see, for personal services, we have 4 part-time positions that I've decided that we were going to freeze this year, freeing up some monies. I believe we have a will call pool that's more than capable of covering that. But we did unfreeze a full-time position budgeted at 6 months with the expectation of the additional new tower. If it does go into effect, it'll probably take a couple months before it's in service. So the reason for unfreezing that full-time position is to man that tower. And then, of course, if you see our capital outlay, a new wave runner is approximately $10,500. So future considerations, replacement of our current towers over the next several years. Our towers were probably built between 1996 through 1998, so they're over 20 years old now. We've been having a lot of maintenance issues with them, and also the new towers, maybe to reflect our new current design, will appease to the curbside appeal and also be more operationally beneficial for us. When it rains, the guys are getting rained on now and things like that. So another thing I want you guys to consider is daylight legislation. There's a chance that we may have to go daylight savings year-round. They're considering that, and that's something I'm concerned about. We currently go, based on statistics, we go through March when the time changes to the end of July. We man 4 towers. We have 9 towers on our beach, potentially 10, and we man them with will call part-timers. If this is a situation where it's going to be year-round, we may want to consider additional time, additional months, maybe starting in December based on our statistics. I can look at, when we're our busiest, and, it's always been a goal of mine is to man all 9 towers. So this is something that, of course, in the long run will increase our personal costs, but it's something to consider because it's in legislation now and they're talking about it. Also, in the long run, Station 75, where we're located upstairs, I believe that building's 45 years old. We can go down a list of things over the years, and as you know, throughout the rest of the city, our infrastructure needs to be addressed eventually. So I thought it was worth mentioning now. And then environmental conditions that I'm concerned about. As you know, our water temperatures each year continue to rise. And in the last 2 years, we've noticed a significant increase in the amount of the algae bloom, the seaweed washing up on shore. When this washes up on shore, and the sun hits it, it releases toxins, it smells very bad, and, potential for red tide as we move through our summer. It's already hot as can be right now. This is something that I'm concerned about that we need to look for in the future, especially on our south end where our rock piles are more prevalent. You can't just rake that stuff up. It gets caught up in the rocks, and it's becoming a nuisance. And with the red tide, there's a lot of concerns on health and things like that. So these are some things we need to pay attention to. I was very pleased on the previous slides. People talked about the beach and environmental concerns for the future. We are in north part of Broward, which is the higher ground, but eventually water levels are going to rise, things like that. These are some concerns I thought I'd bring to your attention. Also, I didn't write this down, but, in the mention of vessel exclusion zones, we may want to look at implementing a maintenance program because, big storms come, those things get broken free, and we may want to consider having a yearly maintenance service agreement with someone to maintain these buoys. Now that we have these beautiful buoys in there, we're providing a safe atmosphere. We're going to potentially have an artificial reef out there with a number of snorkelers. I want to keep it safe. I don't want to lose all of our buoys and then slowly, put them back together and putting them out there. We should have a service agreement. So, thank you for your time. I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Chief, I have a question for you regarding what did it cost us to put in the vessel intrusion?
I believe Patrick could give us the total number that was. He left. I did the cost years ago, and it was I want to say $60,000, but that was like over 4 to 5 years ago.
Okay, so that's rough estimate of less than $100,000 approximately?
Yes, sir.
And this is a good measurement tool for us to look at what we got back for the money we invested in doing it. If you look at how many they had in 2017, 1,691 vessel intrusions, and to 2019 to date, 494. That's a pretty significant drop off, and it seems like, and that's something I would imagine that trend is going to continue.
Absolutely, and like I said, us being located in between two inlets, especially on the weekends, it used to be a nightmare on weekends with jet skis and boats coming in our area. And now that, that the law enforcement can actually write them a citation for coming in our area, and also it's a visual cue for them to keep out of our area. It's been a big change.
Excellent. Vice Mayor?
All right.
Chief, do you have one of your future considerations is replacement of the 9 existing towers? Do you have a guesstimate on that? I received recently my first complaint as commissioner about those towers, how they look like absolute, well, I can't use the word that was given to me, but how they don't look good. Let's put it mildly. That seems to be something that needs to be. We have this beach that we love to brag about, and then we've got these rickety towers that are out there.
So we're going to replace we're going to add the one, we're proposing to add the one this year, and then hopefully funding availability, we can do 2 a year after that, 2 every year after that,
Okay.
and more if warranted or approved.
Do you know what the approximate per tower cost is?
We're proposing, we've estimated the first tower to cost $165,000. So obviously that price will likely escalate every year at a rate that, of approximately 5 to 10%, I think we're predicting.
Are there any grant opportunities for those, or? I guess if there were, we would have done it.
I haven't seen a grant opportunity for those come across yet, but we'll continue to look for those.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Commissioner Goodall.
Okay, so you're looking at my notes now. So 165K. Have we looked at redesigning them as well? I mean, they look like they're from the 80s.
Yes, we have worked with an architect on a total redesign. And as soon as we finalize that, and if we do get this redesign, or excuse me, the new tower approved in the FY20 budget, we'll provide the redesign to the City Commission for comment, and then any revisions, of course.
And what materials are we looking to make these out of?
Generally, it's going to be made out of the same materials because they actually hold up really well.
Do they? Okay.
But I think the roof structure is a little, is
Yeah.
different. Yeah, the roof structure is a little different, and as well as the hardware.
The next question I have is with regards to this maintenance contract for the buoys. I think that's extremely important. We go through all of this, we seem to do this a lot in the city. We make this big, beautiful thing, and then we don't maintain it. Have we explored the cost for a maintenance contract? I mean, you had one hurricane and you probably lost half your buoys.
If we did lose our buoys as a result of a hurricane, likely we could hopefully recover those through FEMA dollars.
But have we looked at a maintenance contract? Is that something that we're even considering?
We have, and actually that would probably reside in the coastal budget. With them just being installed, in fact, not all of them are installed this
Right,
year.
there's still one left.
We wouldn't have to initiate that maintenance contract probably till FY21.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And next we have fire rescue.
Good evening, Mayor Gantz, Vice Mayor Drosky, Commissioners Parnas, Preston, and Hudak, Assistant City Manager Dave Santucci, Assistant Manager Tom Good, City staff, distinguished guests, Chief Holness, and all the fellow city residents. I'm Matt Pelletieri. I'm currently your District Fire Chief for the City of Deerfield Beach District. On behalf of Sheriff Gregory Toney and Fire Chief Joseph Fernandez with Broward County Sheriff's Office of Fire Rescue and Emergency Services, I would like to acknowledge our long-term productive, valued partnership with the City of Deerfield Beach. I would like to start this presentation by pointing out some of our many accomplishments that we have achieved together as a team. There's 3 ratings here. What I'm going to do is I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I'm going to just give you some highlights, what it means, and how we got there. Just briefly, there's multiple performance measures and benchmarks that would take us a long time. So I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version at this point. Deerfield Beach is now received a Class 1 rating for a second rating term in a row. That began in the beginning of October evaluation process. Some of the highlights to know about an ISO 1 rating, what it means to us, is it's an amazing award and certificate. Only 348 fire departments countrywide have this rating, only 36 in Florida, out of 51,200 fire departments. They're all performance measurable outcomes that we're rated on. FY18, we only had a completion of 52% of our fire inspections. So what we did is we had to get our ratings above 65%. So what we did in the meantime through city management, we discussed our best option to get our numbers up to meet the evaluators' expectations and our expectations. We put overtime inspectors on, which increased our numbers from 52% to currently at 90%. We should complete by this fiscal year. So we're on good pace. The revenue generated by them is quite a bit of money, and the cost is quite lower. So it's working out pretty well at this point. So we'll be just shy of 100% by October 1. This was a late implication. I think around January, February, we put the inspectors on, and it's been a catch-up since. So it's working out pretty well. And that is one of our performance rating measures by the ISO evaluator. Also, another one to really point out our partnership, the city water department is evaluated on quality and delivery of water. So special thanks to Tom Good, Alan Fatty, Patrick Altley, and Hugh Dunkley, who were very instrumental in helping us, enlisted a lot of information and assisting us with the testing of fire hydrants, which they have to do. They have to do very rigorous pedo testing, which is very labor intensive. And then fire rescue, we tested 2,826 hydrants on an annual basis, which we do annually regardless of the evaluation. So that is another performance measure that we've achieved. One of the big ones it's been a really neat collaboration with the PIO is the public education outreach. Very important program by the way of City PIO and the BSO Public Education Department. Includes the advertisement and education to the public by the means of public messaging. Scheduled special events examples would be CPR classes, car seat program, junior fire starter program, Ready Now program, Stop the Bleed program, which is a program that became high top priority after the MSD shooting. So with that program, as we've gone out to the schools, we've hit all of them but 3. We'll have 100% completion by the end of fall, and we teach the staff, administration, how to deal with emergencies, because they will be on their own for a little while. So very, very instrumental. It had a large impact. And one thing to know about the ISO rating is it does allow discounted insurance rates for the residents. ISO 1 is a residential discount involved. Now, I don't know that number, but it does happen with an ISO 1 rating. CFI, Commission of Fire Accreditation International, another prestigious program which we are accredited. We as an agency perform a self-assessment of our service to the City of Deerfield Beach, and then we create a standard of cover for our organization and for the individual cities that we serve throughout. We create a strategic plan that requires Deerfield Beach and fire rescue commitment and resources that allows fire rescue to achieve what one of the big evaluations is emergency response force arrival response times. We are within that 90% requirement. So that's a large one to overcome. That's a good one, and that's because of our resources that we have here and the response benchmark that we've met. And that accounts for all low and high risk calls. There's ratings for all low priority calls and high priority calls. Only 266 agencies are accredited countrywide out of 5,200 departments. There's 256 performance indicators that have to be met, and there's 82 pass and fail. We successfully have done that, and we hold the accreditation. Once again, we have an evaluation, a midway evaluation at 3 years where the evaluators come into town, they see how we're doing if we kept up to our bargain, and they come back in 5 years for a full evaluation. CAS, which we are currently in the middle of our CAS inspections now. They will be inspecting our stations, our trucks, our paramedics, our few EMTs, our protocols, with our medical director to evaluate our service that we provide here in the city and throughout the entire county. That, like I said, is going on this week. The inspector will be in our city the full day of Friday and visiting all the stations and all the rescue vehicles here. Again, only 188 agencies are accredited countrywide. So another prestigious award that we're proud to say that we hold, and it's because of the partnership with the city that provides us the tools to do our job. So we all take a little pride in that. Also, in our achievements, 19, we budgeted for a P25 digital radio system. What's important about this radio system, a little bit of the history, but how it affects all of us, is this not only affects fire rescue, Department of Law Enforcement, and our lifeguards. So part of that purchase of those radios and the mandates that we had to go to this system, that includes all 3 of those disciplines. Now, the fire station alerting system is part that we'll get into the budget portion. That is something that we have to install in our stations with the P25 digital radio system. Our system is old, antiquated, and we're getting away from the old school Plectron systems of alerting. They're become obsolete and not as reliable. And this also allows all of us to cross-communicate with our law enforcement partners, mutual aid partners like Palm Beach County. If we work with them, we could speak to our mutual aid cities on one radio system, where opposed we've had problems with communications in the past. Also, one of our achievements where we were able to roll out our Operation Santa program. It got a little bit of a late start last year, which is volunteered by our CERT members and volunteers that come out from Kiwanis and other organizations. We are in the process of the truck being refurbished and looking for a more prestige rollout this year. So, and our goals going forward, you got me, thank you. Our goals going forward is the P25 implementation. It's important that we get our radios rolled out, but our station alerting is the big ticket here, that we have to have our stations evaluated and get those up and running so we're able to receive the calls. So that's definitely one of our major goals to get completed by this year. It may roll over into 21 due to the amount of fire stations in Broward County. This is a mandate from Broward County, by the way. Let me just emphasize that. This is not something everyone volunteered to do. Every municipality has to do this program. So this is a Broward County initiative. Question was asked at one point. Yes, the sheriff manages communications. So this is a fluid moving, fair to say, a moving program that may be It all may come under the sheriff's wing at some point. It's a possibility, not sure, but there's talks. So as of right now, that's in progress. Our goals also is to stay with our ISO, CAS, and CFI accreditation and our certificates and our awards to continue to maintain all of our performance measures, holding ourselves accountable through training and all the different benchmarks that need to be obtained to hold on to these. The goal is to be awarded these certificates with our city partnership and to create the gold standard brand for ourselves. So to be a leader in that is going to be very rewarding for all of us as we continue. They're very difficult to hold on to once you reach these achievements. They're tough to hold on to, and we're doing very well. So getting into the fire inspections, I talked about that briefly at the 52%. So our goal for 20, right now we're going to an annual billing program, it looks like we've discussed. Many of our partner cities, sister cities, do annual billing, which requires us to do annual inspections. So with that being said, we have to be at 100%. Now, that's plus revenue. The city's very dynamic and fluid, I understand that. There's different businesses, different pay structures, different coefficients to figure out their costs.
Matt, if I can just maybe summarize the whole building inspection conversation and steal a little bit of your thunder moving forward, but I think it's important to talk about it holistically and all at once. Matt talked about the ISO rating. One of the hits that we did have was that we did not complete enough of our annual inspections. And I think you said 65% was the low end of the requirement for ISO.
Was willing to work.
In my opinion, 65 is still very low. There's no reason why we shouldn't be completing 100% of our inspections every year.
Correct.
It's important for our businesses and for the patrons of those businesses to ensure that there are proper, sprinkler systems and safety considerations installed into those facilities. Additionally, when they do the fire inspections, they're also checking for business tax receipts as well. So that's a mechanism for us to find out whether or not there's been a change in the business, have they registered with the city, so on and so forth. So how do we get to that 100%? As Matt said, we're projected to get somewhere around 90% this year. But that's using overtime forces, which, although the revenues far exceed the expenses on that, the expenses are still there. And I think it's probably going to end up being about $80,000 to $90,000 on the expense side when it's all said and done. However, also consider the economic development that we've had throughout the city. And unlike building services where when the revenues increase, the expenses increase at the same rate so that the building department can bring in additional resources to support that additional activity. We don't have that same thing with fire inspection services. We have a set amount of inspectors and that's it. Well, if we're going to keep pace with the economic development that we're having throughout the city, we're going to need to bring in an additional inspector, one, to ensure that we do meet that 100% fire inspection rate, and two, to keep up with the development that we're having in this city. Now, the beauty about the BSO contract is if things die down and we don't need all those fire inspectors who are doing what are they called? Not the fire inspections, but the plans review, excuse me. It's slipping my mind. To do all the plans review, well, it's a contract, so we could reduce the personnel services and the fire inspection services if we needed to, and that individual would obviously just go back to another district or whatever the case may be. But to be proactive in terms of the development that we have coming online, as well as the need to bring in, or my desire to have 100% annual fire plan inspections, which would also increase the revenue, we're making a recommendation to add a fire inspector this year. And you'll see that throughout his presentation.
Correct. Thank you. Also on the slide, you'll see it implement a cancer presumptive procedure. It has passed the state legislation. It is a bill, meaning the health of the exposed personnel through fire rescue. But also, a point I want to bring out to you, I take this is a very near and dear topic for me, and it affects a lot of people. So my point is, and I spoke to the city manager quite a bit at length here, my concern is that to correct the problem, we need to correct our behavior. Meaning, we need cleaner facilities that are, all these, there's a lot of programs out there speaking to how to reduce the exposure to, let's say, the carcinogen particulate matters that fly around in these fire stations and so on. So basically what I want to do is work on cleaner facilities that affect health of the firefighters, and we share facilities with city personnel. So I'm going to point this out. Our firefighters, our city employees, business personnel, and the public that enters the current environment, that enters our headquarters or enters any of our facilities, we have the EOC on the 3rd floor at Station 102. We have the IT personnel that work on the 2nd floor. We have visitors from contractors, people that come and visit the stations that come through. So what we need to do is what I'm looking at, especially at our beach station, we should have a shared facility there. It's us, the lifeguards, and public restroom. So we have a lot of public visitors that come in and visit the other side of the building. So in keeping that in mind, my goal is to change our human behavior, change the environment through education. There's a minimum equipment required, which we've gotten a lot of decon equipment on a grant that's been issued out to all of our stations and all of our vehicles, that we're currently in a new practice of decontamination and change. And our goal is to make these human behaviors changes, is to create a safer atmosphere in these facilities. So these particulates travel through our AC vents. They enter our doors, the entrances and exits within the apparatus and bay areas. We find the soot on the doorways. So these are circulating through our facilities. So that's our cancer presumptive plan. We're very aggressive with the decon and our own behaviors. So I want to continue that practice, and for a 20 goal to continue moving forward with that. Moving right on down to technology updates. One of the things that's pretty interesting is amend our pre-hospital medical protocols, which are online through medical control. We have a medical director. The medical directors and the physicians of Broward County meet on a regular basis. Our medical protocols are fluid, dynamic, and always changing. The way we do business, we change, we get pretty aggressive, and sometimes we revert back to other styles of treatment, but it's an ever-changing environment. So the technology updates that we need will come with some of the equipment that we're getting ready to purchase and talk to you about here shortly. And that's very important to us, because not only does it touch our medical protocols, but our fire reporting system, our RMS programs, our patient care reports, and pre-planning fire inspections, all married in with the technology, because it's ever-changing. So we're trying to keep up where we can as an organization and move forward with technology and use it to our advantage to do a better job. On the bottom one, revitalize our CERT program, revitalize within our City of Deerfield Beach volunteer CERT program. What I'd like to see happen, and this is, I'm doing a little bit of research, I'd like to see us bring back the Teen CERT program. Teen CERT program I thought was very vital, gave kids a place to go with their parents. They attended with their parents, their friends, other teenagers. They can receive community service hours, and they learn 8 modules of how to take care of themselves in the event of an emergency, whether they're at home, their family, and they can help out with our program out there. So it's a neat program. I'm trying to see where it has fallen off, and I'm doing some research to see if we can implement that back in. So you'll definitely be hearing from me on that down the road. Okay, operating budget. So right now, we are at 28,501,747. It's a 7.1 increase, percentage increase. And we stay in the personnel services. Let me go up to that first. That's going to include a new fire inspector, and any merit COLA raises that are out there, and the fire inspector to assist in the completion of fire inspections to enforce life safety, as the city manager said. So those are all included in our personnel services percentage increase. In the operating expenditures, the P25 radio system is in there, and I'll touch that here just in a moment, because there is a interest payment due. We do have a 3-year payment schedule for the radio system that is factored into all of this. We also had a fuel over cost run of $14,400. And with our new technology, we are moving from Physio to Zoll, and that's a defibrillator and LifePak and a patient monitor, and that's a plus $17,500. Our existing equipment is old, very expensive to update and upkeep, and this is the latest stuff that's out there, and it works well with our partners in the hospital districts for transmittal, Bluetooth capabilities. We're able to communicate many different ways on here, meaning patient care reports, looking at patient history. All that's part of the importance of these items. Operating equipment, getting back to the P25 first year cost, with the alerting system, we're looking at plus $655,345. What we are able to do is we have a station alerting proposal of $650,000 with our finance department, and the reality of this rolling out, we were able to split that over a 2-year period.
And if I may, Matt, we did have the entire 650 in there originally, and then through conversations with Matt and Greg, and just kind of seeing some of the news out there in relation to that tower down in Hollywood, I just don't foresee them completing that project by next year.
This year.
So I made a decision to split the alerting system costs over the course of the next 2 years rather than 1 year.
Right.
So that's
Makes it a little bit more palatable to deal with. Okay, going right on down, more outlay.
I'm sorry, just for clarification of that. And so the plus 655 is inaccurate?
No, that is correct. That is
for this year?
That is for this year. Next year, you'll see a very similar cost.
Okay.
And then in the third year, you'll see a much reduced cost, as will only include the final payment of the radio system, and not the alerting system.
Yeah, the third year, that'll be the end of it. In our light fleet division, we made a lot of decisions in '08 to withhold our vehicle replacement schedule, and that included our light fleet, meaning our command golf cart, our golf carts that work special events, our treatment and transport cart. The importance of those two carts, our command golf cart, is it gives our command staff the ability to maneuver around large crowds, and we do many events here in the city. Prime example would be 4th of July, so we're able to maneuver through there. In the case there's a large event, they can run the scene and control the strategic and tactical moves that we were going to make at that point. That cart is out of service, needs a motor, batteries, it's 10 plus years old, not worth refurbishing. So we're looking at a replacement for that. And currently, our medical treatment cart has been out of service 2 or 3 times during the Renaissance Festival. So our partners at our fleet services have loaned us a cart from Broward County Fireside. So we're borrowing a cart at no cost. So we're using that until we solve this problem. So we got 1 cart and we're down 2.
Just to address that before you move off that.
Yes, sir.
Considering that's a county park and considering that event's a county event, doesn't it seem to make sense that they should be paying for it instead of us?
That comes through, through the Renaissance Festival, pays all the tab on all, well, not the cart, but for everything else. The cart is, now we do have a cart out there that's used for the bike trails in assistance with county personnel. If they're on during the day, we can have access to their cart to gain access to the west side of the park and have used that in the past. But when they're off hours in the campground and staff is pretty much gone, we have to use our own carts.
That's just one example of when we use the cart. It's all of our special events and that we do throughout the city that we use that as well. So
it's a valid point. It's a good question. But we have a good partnership with them. We use them when they're there.
Okay,
so,
thank you.
Sorry. We also, we've received a marine unit, which we have designated called Marine 102. We do have a boat vessel. We have a 34-foot Intrepid that was given to us by our sheriff's office and our Marine Division down at Port Everglades. We've obtained this asset at no cost. I think the only thing we're doing is putting fuel in it. We're going to put some signage on it. We're transferring our marine equipment that came from our old vessel that they did give us free of charge, and it will be docking here potentially at Sullivan Park or a very close location, and it will be in service. We're not adding personnel. I did put I put $5,000 in there for a cost in case any further equipment that we need. I put that in the light fleet section, but it's no personnel cost. We were going to use it with on-shift personnel. We will down a unit if we have to go out and perform water duties with our counterparts of lifeguards or DOE. We've worked together with them quite a bit with this. Another outlay is the power load you'll see on here for plus $25,000. Going forward, the new rescue vehicles come with a power loading option that is now becoming standard on all the vehicles. Lessens back injuries, our liabilities of people going in and out of work, the risk management issues, and the workman's comp liabilities. We noticed that there's less injuries with this power load system. So ergonomically, it works very well for our personnel. And we're not the first ones to do it. It's around the country. Our future apparatus that we're buying is coming with it. The reason why these are in here over a 2-year period is 2 trucks were purchased in 2015, and these are just going to be a simple add-on. So we left one in here for this year, and then futuristic considerations for 21 if we need to do it, or if we can somehow get it in between. We also added computer replacements. Our technology is over 5 years old, and many of our stations cannot keep up with the current technology that we share with the sheriff's office, and we have issues quite a bit with it not being able to work within the confines of our personnel. So it's our time to, on a computer replacement program, we do have a replacement. We do change these out every so many years. We try to stagger our stations, and right now we're at a level that we need to do a majority. We do have some new units out there we're not replacing. We're very selective about how we do it, and we start with our command staff first, our upper officers, and then we roll down to our line personnel. Will get the older versions because they work on slower and easier programs that work within the memories and technology. So outside of that, that's why you see the capital outlay at 2,000%. That's an alarming number. I think the percentage is an eye shocker, so I just wanted to break this down a little bit for you. There's a few other items that were included in there, and it's items that we need, and the city manager and I cut quite a bit, just trying to get caught up, and we realized that those are just going to be pushed out items. So that's where we leveled off at.
And if I could go ahead and finish off this slide and just say, yes, we did do a whole heck of a lot of cuts to include the air-conditioned cab golf cart version that the chief had originally presented at double the cost, which I like to tease him about. But in any case, outside of the consideration, outside of these numbers here, you'll also notice that there is an engine replacement and a rescue replacement for this year. And the reason why that's outside of the consideration is because BSO does not buy those for us. We buy those as the city, because in our agreement with BSO, we still own all the assets. So it's not in the consideration, but it is a cost to the city, obviously, and those are being those will be purchased, and then we'll put that into the lease purchase program. Additionally, and Eric will talk about this tomorrow a little bit, but as we've created the building fund to increase transparency, where we were in that, obviously, like I said yesterday, was a major hit to the general fund for a 1-year hit. We've also looked to ways to kind of reallocate some of the more appropriate expenses to that account. So in the case of fire rescue, the captain and one of the lieutenants, I believe, I think he's a lieutenant.
Yes.
Yes, he is. In fire inspection services, all they do is plans review. That's all they do. So it's very appropriate to have their salaries allocated to the building fund. And so it's in the consideration, but then it's charged over to the building fund. And so those are things outside of the consideration that I wanted to point out to the commission.
Yeah. Also, we're kind of in a unique situation that we do create revenue. So this pie chart will represent the revenue total that we do collect from fire assessment fee, transport revenue, fire inspections, pre-fire plan, and the Hillsboro mile contract. So we collect $17,154,668. Our budget total is $28,501,747, and our offset's just a little over $11 million. So we are in a unique scenario that we do collect revenue. That does help assist with our budgeting issues and expenses. I bring that to you just to show you the breakdown in case you have any questions how they work, and you can dive into those if you want specific numbers. Correct?
Next slide.
Good?
Move on.
Okay, I'm sorry. So future considerations. In the future considerations, before I start on the infrastructure there, just going back to the apparatus, I want to just explain to you that I've been around here for almost 27 years, so I'm fully aware of 2008 when we put a hold on all of our future purchasing and our vehicle replacement schedule. That was put, the brakes were on. So currently, our fleet is very aged, very damaged, and we're holding it together. We spend a lot of money annually to fleet services to keep these trucks band-aided up and keeping them on the road. So the example I want to give to you, just to show you why we have this replacement going, is we are way beyond our recommended years of frontline service. Rescue frontline should be 5 to 7 years. Year 6, we should be considering repurposing and selling those vehicles when they have a lot of value. So unfortunately, our units, we have a couple of units on the road today that are 15 and 19 years old. Now they're in and out of fleet, they break down daily, we have our issues with them. It's very labor intensive to swap these vehicles out and to go into another older vehicle, but this is our aging fleet, so this is why we have this vehicle replacement, and city manager is fully aware of where we're at, and we're working with it, and we're doing the minimum that we can to keep the budget palatable at this point, so we can move forward and future out. We did put out a schedule for all the way to 2024, replacing a vehicle a year, which is a purchase with a lease, and they can explain on how all that works, and I think you may be fully aware from previous purchases. Engine companies frontline recommended is 10 years, 5 for reserve status. We currently have 1 in service that's 19 years old with multiple issues. So this is why we've pushed for this year to get on an order schedule, and that'll put us down to just a couple units to be in a newer fleet. We're that close. So that's been an ongoing project. We know it's expensive, so we try to push it in where we can, and that's why I wanted to touch on that. So most importantly, the infrastructure of the fire stations. Station 4, Hillsboro Federal, 79 years old. Station 6-6, Powerline Road, 590 Powerline Road, 43 years old. Station 7-5, on the beach, 46 years old. Station 111 was a temporary trailer for 2 years. It is now older than 15 plus years. So before I jump on the 2 bottom, which I just touched on the fleet, I'll talk about the drones just momentarily. But things to know about these stations for future consideration for us to start talking about them. I appreciate the commissioners talking about it at the last few meetings because these are future issues for all of us. Currently, we have buildings with spalding concrete that's fallen off the buildings, large chunks. That is with need like a high-rise, concrete restoration. That beach is failing the same way the high-rises are. We have holes in the interior. We have concrete floor landings that are falling apart. So these are things that we're patching up. We're working on them to hold them over, but future we're going to need to start looking. Now the recommended years for fire service lifespan is 20 years. We're way beyond that. So but some of our concerns are structural. We have separate bathrooms and dormitories for male, female in today's fire service. A little different today. How we share space, very important. And we have ADA concerns with a few of them and life safety codes that we continue to meet, so to go forward. So something to consider. I just wanted to share that with you because the conversation did come up, so you have something more to sink your teeth in on those. And that's really what I have. Sorry I was a little winded about that.
It's okay.
You were. Sorry, Commissioner.
Chief, I have a question for you.
Yeah, I know.
Regarding the ISO rating.
Yes, sir.
Considering the huge investment the city's put in to make sure that we achieve that.
Yes, sir.
I think it would behoove the Broward Sheriff's Office to actually, on their own dime, determine what kind of savings and what that means to our taxpayers in the city of Deerfield Beach, and probably all the cities
right.
that have this. those numbers are important for us, much like it was with the vehicle and the vessel excursion numbers. We can see what bang we're getting for our money.
Correct.
It's nice to be in an elite group, but what does that mean financially to our city?
Right.
With the investment we've put in, I think those numbers are something we should have.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Well, can I say this, Mayor? There's a sliding scale to the ISO ratings. Many departments around the country are a 4, which is lowest, pretty much, and a 2 to 3 affects businesses' rates, and a 1 affects residential. So there's a scale in there somewhere. I don't know how it affects, if it's by insurance company, percentage, we'll find that out, okay. So, but yeah, there's a scale to it.
Could we go to the slide of operating budget, please? When I look at defibrillators and life packs,
Yes, sir.
there's still one unit, correct?
Yes, sir. What they come with is a paired tablet for our patient care reporting, so they all speak to each other. So it's a combination, but yes, it's all one unit.
And so what does the $17,000 represent? 17,500?
That's going to be the plus difference in our operating expenditures or our capital outlay to get those.
Say again?
Commissioner, that's is an equipment line item, and so the defibrillator life packs that they'll be purchasing this year is a $17,500 increase to that particular line item.
Okay. And how is it that Station 66, I should say Station 75, is older than Station 66, being that Station 66 was built first?
I went by the plans that I can get my hands on. I tried to go on the county website. I just went by the stuff I can get because most of the stuff doesn't exist.
I can tell you, Station 66, and by the way, Broward County counts the stations. 66 come before 75.
Correct. After we switched from our Deerfield numerics, yes. So correct.
And I can tell you,
You can tell me.
66 was there first.
Oh, I know. Sorry.
Commissioner Hudak?
First of all, I feel like I'm ad nauseum when I said that we've kicked the can too far down, and this is the cost of not keeping up with this years ago, and it's something that I know that we need to move forward with. The Hillsboro contract, when does that come up?
The Hillsboro contract term aligns with the term that we have with the Broward Sheriff's Office for Fire Rescue Services. I believe that comes up in 2022.
Definitely want to look to renegotiate.
2020? September 30, 2020. I apologize.
Oh.
It's 5 years. Yes, thank you.
2020, good. I think we need to renegotiate that. That's all I had.
I have one other item.
Yes, sir.
Chief. The defibrillator that you have in there, that is just for your apparatuses, right? This is not for city facilities? Okay.
No, those would be more of an automatic external defibrillator, AEDs, that we we have mounted in facilities, but these go on all the apparatus.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it doesn't come out of their budget for any of those type of life safety measures that we have at our city facilities?
No, we actually updated our defibrillators the past 2 fiscal years, or maybe not this fiscal year, but the fiscal year prior to that. And we actually included the Stop the Bleed kits as well. I remember, I feel like I remember a conversation about including those into the defibrillators that we have here mounted in city facilities, and they are in the Stop the Bleed kits are in all of those as well. So.
Okay, but that comes out of a separate budget as opposed to this, just like
that's the facilities.
The Narcan pens that, or whatever device we end up using, those would come out of a separate budget, not out of here.
Correct. If the Narcan pens, and actually,
or the whatever.
Chief Pelletier, yeah, you want to use a different method, but we believe that we can obtain those through a grant, as they already do. So we're working on that.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Vice Mayor Drosky.
My question is ultimately, I think, for the city manager, but let me just start. I mean, Chief, you guys do a great job, with the ISO ratings, and the accreditations that you get are fantastic. I said at the during the discussion on the fire assessment fee, you know, if we want the Cadillac service, we have to pay for that. I get it. And you have a 7.1% increase, and here, you know, on the page, on the slide that's now gone, but lists, you know, what goes into that increase. I'm sure you could have put a million other things on this list.
Correct.
And so this list will change from year to year. So the question is, you know, at one point, you know, this is 7.1%. The next presentation from law enforcement is going to be 6.9%. At what point, this 7% compounding every year, do we price ourselves out of this? I mean, we can't. I want it both ways. I want to have the best service, but I mean, at 7% compounding per year, we're going to price ourselves out of this at some point in time. Where is that line? Do you see that line, city manager? At some point, you have to have that in your head somewhere, I think.
Absolutely. I think you have to realize that that the next couple of years with the P25 compliancy requirements and some of the capital costs that we are catching up to, we're probably going to see a percentage increase, hopefully less than this next year. I look at them to make them crunch their numbers better, but but typically without these things, we've seen in the past 3% increases, 4% increases, much more realistic increases prior to this. But we've just got some expenses that, you know, we were very transparent about last year that were coming, that would have an impact on the budget, and this is, and here we are ready to make those payments. So.
But the P3, I mean, that's going to be next year as well. I mean, we were talking about, you know, engine, you know, replacements. Forget, as Commissioner Hudak pointed out, forget about the fire stations. I mean, we're well beyond fixing that in our operating budget. I mean, that's a bond issue or bust as far as I'm concerned. But I just think you could continually replace this list. It may not be the system next year, may be something else. There's going to be something else next year, you know, that comes up that's unforeseen that we don't know about now. That's just going to keep replacing these over and over and over. And at some point, you know, it has to stop. And I just don't know when that is. But at the same time, I want the level of service Sorry, my mic went out. I want the level of service that the residents are used to. So there's got to be a middle point of those needs.
Yeah, you know, it's important that that honestly pressure be kept on the Broward Sheriff's Office and the county in terms of the personnel costs. Most importantly, to be honest with you, and two, that we maintain a consistent capital replacement, and we look to reduce the operating expenditures. Again, we're doing some catch up on the capital. We're not going to have an engine next year, I don't think. I don't believe that would be in the capital. But yeah, like I said, the P25 compliancy is almost a $2 million hit over 3 years.
I mean, I just want to say, this is the cost of having a 20-year-old fire truck. I mean, if we had addressed this stuff 10 years ago, when we, you know.
We shouldn't, so it's.
Yeah, no, I understand, and I'm not faulting the commission of 10 years ago. I understand what the, you know, what it was like with regards to the recession and all of that. But that's where we're at now, because we couldn't do it back then. And, you know, it's a cost of doing business.
One thing that we have to keep in mind as well, that if we see an increase 5%, 7%, hopefully not more, always keep in mind that our life safety departments are doing probably as much as they possibly can to keep those costs low. But here's what's going to happen each and every year for a fact. Call volume is going to go up. Fact. You're going to have more situations where police officers and firefighters are being more dangerous situations, and to keep them safe and to allow them to deal with the situations that they need to deal with is going to cost. That's a fact. So when we see a 7.1 increase, we need to keep in mind that could be easily 8.5 or whatever the case is. I will guarantee you, when you look at the dollars, they're really not where they need to be in order to do the things that they would like to do it. Often what is happening, they do it undermanned, which means you're putting other people in tough situations, and that means you compromise, the work is compromised at that point. You know, I don't know that we have the Cadillac service. We have a great service, but to get the Cadillac service, we need to give them a lot more money. Then we could get the Cadillac service. What we got right now is a great service, but it's not operating as good as it could operate.
This is no different than if you have your household income and you have a budget for your household, and let's say your vehicle budget's whatever it is, you know, oil changes. After several years, it comes time you have to change your tires. And that means your budget line item for that year, when it comes to your vehicle, goes up. And we've kicked that down the road as long as we could, and now it just gets to the point, if you go any further than this, it becomes dangerous. So it's time to pay. It happens. It's not a recurring year cost. Every single year that kind of increase, so it's understandable. So
Keep the guys safe. Keep the personnel safe. That's really the name of the game. That's the name of the game.
Yeah, a lot of these items in here are going to be single costs, and some are pushed out a couple of years. But I agree that maybe down the road there's going to be some other issues, but this is what we're faced with today. So, yes, sir.
yes.
It's not just keeping the firefighters safe, it's keeping the public safe. They need the equipment. For whatever reason, the commission kicked this down the road over the years, and we can't kick it any further. We got to bite the bullet, pay the bill, and move on. We can't keep kicking certain things down the road. Prices go up every year. I bought my first car, 1960 Austin Healey, for $1,900. I tried to buy a used one for sentimental purposes. Last year, they wanted $22,000 for a car I paid $1,900 for. Same car, not in as good a condition as when I bought it new. Let's face the facts. Safety is first, both for the people that give it and the people that receive it. And we can kick it down, and we can say, oh, we can nickel and dime this, and maybe we can wait another year for that. Next year it's going to cost more, and more, and more. So it's time we bite the bullet, pay the bill, and move on.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Very well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just before law enforcement goes, if I could, just something I should have mentioned previously when sustainable management was going. We're actually going to have an add-on item for the agenda, which will be the artificial reef grant agreement that we need to enter into. We obviously just got that from the county, but we want to make sure that we're expedient in awarding that, or entering into that grant agreement for the $150,000. So I'll be adding that to the agenda for July 2nd.
Okay.
Sorry.
My mic isn't green, but I guess it's working. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, Commissioners, thank you for having us here tonight to present this to you. I'm Rodney Brimlow. I'm the District Deerfield Beach Chief for Law Enforcement, and I'd like to go through some of the achievements that we have. Just before I do that, though, I think I'm grateful for the comments that I have heard already from the Commission regarding fire rescue, and it really is a choice that you guys have to make for the best that you think is best for the residents. So we appreciate the fact that you guys keep that in mind as well, and we appreciate that you support us with that. For fiscal year 19, thus far we've seized just about $300,000. This is going to end up being a couple $100,000 more than in previous years because of some input that we've received from citizens and from commissioners. regarding certain types of crimes that have been committed in the city, specifically those dealt with fraudulent activity, with construction companies and other things. We've started targeting them at a very, very high level, and we are taking care of business by starting at the top and then letting that trickle down to other ones. So we are glad to see that we're having some success in that already. This year we did outfit our deputies that are in the schools with MP5 rifles, that they will be able to respond to any kind of a threat that comes upon our school grounds. Also, in Deerfield Beach, we have increased the training tremendously for our school resource officers. Just as an example, they all train with our patrol deputies as well, and everybody in Deerfield Beach has been in every single school. And that's an important thing because we did not want deputies responding to our schools here and not knowing what the layouts are, not knowing where the cafeteria is, not knowing where the administration building is. So we have ramped up training, which is on-duty training that we do here in the district, unlike any of the other districts that you might come upon. Risk protection order protocol, which was pursuant to some statutory changes that took place. We are aggressive with that in Deerfield. We want to protect the citizens, and our deputies are aggressive in making sure that anytime they come upon someone who might meet the criteria, they're mentally ill, we want to prevent them from being able to purchase firearms in the city and certainly not use them in any way. That law also allows us to seize any firearms that they may have in their possession as well, and we do work to do that. We have nearly completed the build-out of the Operational and Tactical Intelligence Center. That is very unique to not only Broward County, but to South Florida. You have many, many cities that are looking at us currently and watching what we're doing in our build-out. Not only do you have other cities, but you have numerous vendors, and nationally people are looking at what we're doing. Recently, I was at the International Association of Chiefs of Police meeting on technology, and we discussed these features about intelligence centers. Most of them, they start off with a good idea, and they back off into a mode that they're only responding really to high priority calls, these major calls only. That is not what Deerfield is doing. We are actually doing what was the original intent that all of these other agencies had thought about and planned for, but were unable to make happen. And we were fortunate in Deerfield that we have a team of very dedicated individuals, deputies and analysts, civilian personnel that are making that happen for the city of Deerfield. The funds that we're using for that, some of them are seizure funds, some of them we've rearranged some of our operational funds and made that happen. Marcy's Law compliance, this has been a challenge for us because on the one hand we want to balance the information that we give out to the public as far as crimes that are happening, and we think the public not only has a right to know that, but we think it's good for the public to know what's going on in the community. Unfortunately, in some ways, it's restricted us, made it more difficult. We've been working with our IT folks to enhance our capabilities of being able to get that information back out to the community. We have to, under that amendment that was passed by the Florida citizens, we have to ensure that victim information is protected at a very, very high level. Any information that could lead to the identity of the victim must be protected by law enforcement or will be in violation of that amendment that was passed. Improved communication through social media. I'm a big believer that it's law enforcement's responsibility to educate the public on what law enforcement does, and part of that is through our Twitter and Instagram feeds, also through our public relations activities at homeowners groups, local groups. Anytime that we have a meeting, we meet with the pastors. With the mayor started a quarterly breakfast with them. Those moments that we have, those opportunities to engage the public and to bring them on board, we will utilize those. They're very important to me personally, but I think more importantly, they're important to the community because the community has a greater access to what law enforcement is doing. And this year also, I know Fire Rescue is here. Deerfield Beach is very unique also that we have been practicing with our fire rescue colleagues to consistently do unified command on scenes. This is both mine and Chief Palateri's understanding that the more we practice that, even on the smaller scale things, the moment that we really need it on a big scale event, all of our personnel will, on both sides of the house, be ready to engage and involve ourselves in a unified command presence. So we have been doing that in Deerfield now for about 8 months, and we will continue to do it, even including fire rescue training deputies in short spurts, so that we make sure that we're always engaged with them on major scenes.
If I could, and I don't mean to belabor that point, but I just want you to understand that how abnormal that actually is. For fire rescue and police to be in a unified command on small incidents as they are, that normally doesn't happen. And my hat is off to Captain Brimlow and Chief Pelletieri, who have implemented that, because that is not a common thing, and I give them kudos for doing that. That'll pay off dividends should we ever have a major incident.
Just as an example, thank you, City Manager, just as an example, something as to us, I know it's not minor to the individuals involved, but something like a small fire in an area where we have to evacuate personnel. In times past, we were kind of just all doing our own thing, and now it's much more unified. So we have things, for example, that we have the fire service doing their thing. My deputies might launch their drone to give them a better view of the scene. We'll have buses coming to put elderly people on air-conditioned buses and bringing water to them. There's a lot that goes into that in the past we just really didn't consider or think about. But with a unified command, we're constantly looking at each other's lane, if you will, to make sure that we're enhancing each other's activities. This is another example. It was one of the first times we did it, which was kind of made us absolutely convinced that we needed to do this. We had a fire alarm going off over at JM, and there was a truck that needed to go northbound through there. Of course, the truck had lots of explosive gases on the truck, and in the past, law enforcement would be like, yeah, go on, just go past the, we don't think about that, but with a unified command, everybody's on the same page, everybody's on board. It's been very successful here in Deerfield. Fiscal year 20 goals. We're going to expand the drone program. Actually, just this week, we have currently 3 certified deputies in the district that operate drones. Just this week, they got their brand new drones, which we had purchased for them. These drones are better than the old ones in that now they have a PA system on them. They also have lighting on them that we didn't have before, and they're much more stable at flying. When we had the first round of drones, as an example, we sent a drone in. We had a barricaded subject, which typically would have taken hours upon hours to resolve. We would have had to have SWAT would be tearing down the walls. We'd have a big thing going on. In this case, we simply smashed out a window, flew the drone in, because everybody thought the suspect had left the house, flew the drone in. The drone searched the house for us, found the suspect hiding in the closet, and he actually surrendered to the drone. He says, don't shoot. But very successful. And so the drone program is very good. We also aided fire rescue in finding a person who was drowning along the beach. We threw the drone up there. The drone went down, found him right away, and we could put the resources where they need to go. Drone program is a very successful program for us. We're going to continue that. We want to expand that by about 60% and include a couple more deputies on that program. Our Intelligence Center camera expansion business partnership is moving along. We have formalized our MOUs, our memorandums of understanding, that we can partner with some of our businesses locally, as well as even our homeowners groups and other civilian partners. Just as an example, there's a major retailer here in the city of Deerfield Beach that Deerfield Beach will be the only city that they have partnered with law enforcement, granting access to their cameras, that we are able to monitor them in case there is an emergency situation or even a crime in progress. And there are several of those that are happening right now that we're completing the MOUs on those. So that's a very positive thing for the city. It increases the safety of the residents, and it increases our timeliness in responding to crimes in progress. Establishing a community advisory panel, this is something that the city manager has authorized me to do, is to increase engagement by the community. It would also require engagement by the commission staff, that I have to work this out with the city attorney, but that we would have an advisory panel that meets regularly to give me and my staff input on what is going on in the community. So it would be a cross-section of the community, input from the commission on who's actually on that board, and to allow the communication of frank and honest and open communication between me and my staff and the community, so that they understand where law enforcement's perspective is coming from, but I also and my staff can understand the needs of the community and better engage and meet those needs. We're going to enhance our social media presence as the Intelligence Center is operational. We actually started out on Instagram already. We're floating this project right now. It is only dealing with subjects that we don't know, and we're floating that out to the community like, hey, if you know this person, email us or call Crime Stoppers. We're going to continue to increase our presence in social media. We are partnered up with the city staff as well over in Rebecca Medina's office. And Dave helps us all the time, and Ms. Penoyer. We have a great relationship with all of them, and they're helping us also to get that off the ground as best we can. Domestic Violence Awareness, Education, and Reduction Program. Those of you who may have seen some of the recent stats, year-to-year stats, there had been an uptick in domestic violence case reports over the last year, from last year to this year. It concerns me. It could be that there is an increased reporting, which is great. I just want to make sure that we address it as best as we can. We're working with women in distress. We're also starting a unique program in Deerfield Beach, whereby we will be ensuring, to the best of our ability, that offenders do not have the ability to re-offend. So we ourselves will be checking up on domestic violence offenders while they await trial to ensure the safety of victims, both the other partner and any children that are involved in those cases. So we may not be able to change the mindset of people, but we certainly can work at it from the enforcement side and on the education side as well. For operating budget, the personal services looks like it went up quite a bit on the operating budget. I do want to tell the city was had some foresight in 2014 to engage in a COPS grant to bring on 4 deputies into the city, and that was under a grant program. Part of that program meant that year after year, the city would take on more of the financial responsibility for those 4 deputies, and the grant would reduce its contribution to that. The way that works is that the Broward Sheriff's Office does not charge any ancillary costs to that. It really only focuses on salaries related to those 4 deputies. That has since expired. The city has been paying for that, but not under the consideration. The city's been paying for that out of their general operating funds, not out of the BSO consideration. So that has come due. Those 4 deputies have been in the city of Deerfield Beach since 2015, and the city has been paying for them. However, now that those monies will be lumped into the consideration. With all of the upstart costs for that amount comes to about $900,000 for not only the deputies, but all of the equipment, the vehicles, and everything else that goes along with that. And if you look at the COPS grant being considered, that actually reduces that number to about $20,142,000, which is actually a 4.5% increase. Part of the increase in personal services is the contractual obligations we have from the unions on pay raises. BSO still remains one of the most economical that you can come upon. We do have to compete with other agencies. For example, Coconut Creek, which is also in the FRS system, the same retirement system, offers deputies a $10,000 signing bonus if they will leave the Broward Sheriff's Office and go to Coconut Creek. The Seminole Police Department starts their officers out at about a 40% higher pay rate than deputies start at. So there is a lot to consider about the costs for personnel services, but considering all the contractual obligations, that actually has gone up about 4.5%. That's the net increase to the city, considering the positions you were already paying for. Under operating expenditures, the biggest one, I'm sure fire rescue experienced the same thing, is the increase in fuel costs, which has gone up significantly year over year. That's about a $15,000 increase. There's a debt interest expense, which is similar to what you would see on the fire rescue one. That has to do with the P25 radio system that is prorated out over 3 years. That number will go down from year to year, that debt interest expense. And under the operating expenditures, also the vehicle leases and additional in insurance costs, both facility and personnel insurance costs. So those are the major figures that factored into the operating expenditure increase. Under the capital outlay, you see that it's a 20% increase, but the increase is $211,000. That is precisely the amount for the P25 radio system on the law enforcement side. We held all of the rest of the capital expenses flat. That is broken out over 3 years. That number also will go down from year to year, because that is the amount that's owed today, but that is reduced by the interest rate for the next year. So that number also will go down by next year. But that is essentially the increase in the capital outlay. We also have a message board. I'm sure some of you have seen the complaints. Our message boards are way over their lifespan. We do have some that volunteer. We have good relationships with partners. We had one of our message boards out on the bridge coming from Coconut Creek into the city because of recent fatalities that we've had along Hillsboro Boulevard. And of course, some drunk person took that out, which actually saved their life. Had they not hit that, they would have ended up on the turnpike. But we do need to replace our own message boards with that. Transfers and reserves is another area that has to do with the funding for our centralized costs, which include central investigations, human resources, and all of those other factors that are down there. So although it appears that there is a 6.9% increase from year to year, the city is not actually experiencing that kind of a cost increase because of the absorption of the deputies that you're already paying for on different line items. Future considerations beyond fiscal year 2020, the school safety and evaluation, the technologies and platforms there. We're looking at several different methods for communicating with the schools. Schools are unique in many ways, and trying to both communicate with our radio systems as well as communicate with the staff has been problematic for years. So we are looking at some innovative ways to communicate with the schools. Some of those will include our direct communication with staff members in the school, as well as enhancing our radio system in there. Right now, all Deerfield Beach deputies have P25 radios. They're still operating on the old system, but we have the radios already. Even though the city has not yet paid for them, we all have those radios here in Deerfield. Improving law enforcement accessibility to school grounds. This is a unique problem since the MSD incident, and the schools now want to be hardened and they want to be secure. That does create unique problems for law enforcement gaining access as well. So we are working on various ways that law enforcement will be able to gain access into the schools in any kind of an emergency situation where we're not delayed or where we don't need fire rescue to give us access. The radio project, I've mentioned several things about that already, and fire rescue covered some of their stuff with regard to that. As I said, we already have the radios, and we're working with the P25 radios right now. We have done work to create a standard template. The standard template in Deerfield allows us to quickly switch over to communicate with fire rescue if we need to, or to communicate with any other municipality or even agency outside of the county as they're coming into our county. This has worked seamlessly, and we had a pursuit that ended up in Delray Beach. It worked perfectly. It was a beautiful transition. And also we have that template that works on any mass event that we would have. It's very seamless. It's merely simply turning a dial. We don't even need to look at the radio to know where that is. We've been practicing that in our roll calls and other trainings. And it goes seamlessly right to our main talk channels for any major incident, which will alleviate a lot of the problems that we've had in the past where nobody knows which channel they should be on. Also with the Broward County and Broward County Chiefs of Police, this template is being spread out throughout all of the jurisdictions so that all of the cities are working off of the same template, creating a greater communication between the cities. So that will help us all if there is a mass situation, mass casualty incident in the future. The Intelligence Center OTIC community partnerships, we will continue doing that. The goal in the next year and beyond that is to increase our license plate reader position in the city, throughout the city, but in the city as well. It is a tool that is underutilized in many places, and City of Deerfield Beach will benefit greatly from it. We've also started partnerships with the Department of Transportation and the Florida Highway Patrol to glean data from them as well to assist us in our license plate reader program, as well as our camera system for our parks, city facilities, city structures, infrastructure, critical infrastructure, and those types of things as well.
If I may, just real quick, Mayor, you talked a lot during these presentations about bang for your buck, and when it comes to this OTIC community partnership and the OTIC room itself, on the law enforcement side of the house, I think they fall behind in terms of industry standards of the number of deputies that they should have out on the road. They do a wonderful job with what they have, but this right here is a way in which we can leverage technology to supplement personnel, and so that's why this program is so important to us.
Yeah, that is very true. Thank you. And lastly on here is the Law Enforcement Services Building. I don't know when the law enforcement building was built. We still have the original jail cells there, which probably would qualify for some sort of a grant, I'm sure, to get some special building built there. But we do need a building that meets the needs of our deputies. The building that we have is significantly outdated, but we would like to have the one that the city would be able to utilize for proper policing, booking, interviews, and all of those kinds of things. Even as we see we're building out the intelligence center, we're running into additional problems which end up costing us more to get the intelligence center in place. But we realize the need for it, so we're willing to spend that money. But it is something that we need to look forward to implementing and having a permanent structure that is appropriate for law enforcement in Deerfield. And that is it.
Thank you, Chief. I will say this, there's a couple things in here. Marzy's Law, for those of you who don't know, is basically limits the amount of information that can be released to the public. I think it's been widely misinterpreted, especially by other counties, and how it comes out. I mean, it's been so ridiculous that they wouldn't release to the public where a suspect was arrested because that location happened to be too close to the victim's home, to where the actual incident occurred. Another incident where you had a person who was accused of child neglect, but they would not release the name of the school that this person, or daycare this person actually worked for. So different counties, it's been poorly interpreted, in my opinion, to the point where it's hurting us in what information we can get out to the public that would help them in preventing further crime. The state legislature once again did another bang-up job of screwing it up. So hopefully they can fix that in the next legislative session, but I understand that's why it's put an extra burden on all of you and has caused frustration, I know, for myself when it comes to our crime report. The other issue, and I see this again, and this is a failure of our school board that I'm so sick and tired of, that we need to really start addressing and sending letters officially from the City of Deerfield Beach and demanding an answer from the superintendent and the school board members to explain to us why we are still paying for school resource officers in the elementary school level when the kids that go there are from all other areas outside of the City of Deerfield Beach. We make it a priority because it's the right thing to do. It's their responsibility, and they're not doing the right thing, and I'm sick and tired of paying for it and letting them sit up there and waste money the way they do. So I think it's time that we take a step and move forward with that. That puts an extra burden on your department, and we're glad to do it. We shouldn't have to do it, but I appreciate that.
We appreciate that too.
Every time I see schools in your budget, anything that has to do with that, it makes me sick because I know how much money the school board wastes on a regular basis, that they should be taking care of this. and it shouldn't be a burden on us to do it. It's really frustrating to see that. The drone service that you have, what you've done with that, fully supportive of it. It makes sense, and that is something that I'd like to see expanded as well. You and your department, your men and women, do an outstanding job. You do more with less, and it's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Commissioners?
The mayor stole my thunder with regards to us still paying for the school resource officer. So I'm not sure how we put pressure on the school board, but I think it's something we really do need to explore. Again, we do it for the right thing, as the mayor said, but it really isn't the City of Deerfield Beach's responsibility. And I don't know how we address that, but have at it.
Commissioner Preston?
I think we address it like the mayor suggested, and that is sending them, the school board, a letter challenging them and seeing what their response is. The mayor also said that we're happy to do what we're doing, and we are. But there are multiplicity of issues that I think the school board should lend itself to, and its resources, to help resolve those. And I think it's worth it to make that type of communication with them and ask for a commitment from them.
Commissioner Parnas?
Politics 101. School board members are elected. I think we should send them a letter that any school board member that does not support paying for resource officers will not get our support. That'll wake them up. We have 80,000 people that live here. A lot of them vote, and that's the solution. Everybody wants to get reelected.
Is that it? Thank you.
Thank you.
Last of our presentations.
Thank you, Mayor. That concludes the presentations for this evening.
Okay. I'd like to open it up to the public. Anyone who'd like to speak, please come up. Just give your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Commissioners, City staff. Thank you very much for all of your presentations this evening. They've been very informative. I do have some questions. The first question is about the fencing that's supposed to go around the FVC tracks. I'd like to know what type of fencing are we putting up there, and the fact that we're trying to develop Dixie Highway. I would like to understand that there's going to be this fencing will be attractive to those to that area. You mentioned about retiring of senior staff members. I'd like to know, are we going to replace those or senior staff members by promoting someone else to their position, or are we just going to leave that position vacant? The Stormwater Fund, how much money is actually in that fund at this time? And when you spoke about replacing the meters and the piping, when these pipes are coming from the street to a person's home, are you matching the fittings and all of that so to their house, so that, or do they have to do anything about their plumbing once you're replacing the pipes? Under the construction, I just became aware of this about 2 days ago over at Ovita McKeithen, and I've spoken to our new parks director. The bathrooms don't have hooks on the back of them that if you go in there and you want to hang up your pocketbook, you can't hang up your pocketbooks in the ladies' room. So I'd like to make sure that in the new construction of all of the buildings, that that's given consideration, and also that we look at putting change stations in the men's bathrooms as well. And I think that's going to become a law soon, that that's going to be, that you must have. Do we still have the hurricane fund? And if so, how much is in that? What happened with the purchasing of the property on the beach that's owned by those folks? I know we didn't get the funding from the state to purchase that property. Will we try and do that at the city level? What's our next step on that? When the fire department spoke about the ISO rating, is that something that the residents should find on their insurance policy, that it's, especially for Deerfield, that you have a policy here that, you know, since you have the ISO rating, that we're going to, that we get a reduction and we see that amount of money on the, on our insurance bill? I'd like to know if that's an issue. And also the CERT program. What areas in the city have people that are members of CERT and are functioning at this time? Because I heard you say you want to start the new teen program back again. And for BSO, all of the confiscated funds that you have received, how are we utilizing those funds? Because I have some seniors who need certain things, and I'd like to know if there's any way that those confiscated funds can be put into some programs for what these seniors need. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? I'm going to close it to the public. I don't know if we want to address things that were particular to tonight. Some of these are general that don't seem to apply for tonight. But
Sure. So in terms of the fencing that will go along Dixie Highway that we've budgeted for, that's going to be a state fencing, just like what you're going to see at the Brand-Hilda Richardson Knowles Memorial Park and Historical Cemetery. I have to think about how to say that sometimes. I apologize. In terms of the folks that were retiring and how are they being replaced, and we obviously have policies in place to ensure that we do open, transparent, fair competition for our positions that we advertise, and of course that's open to any existing employees who qualify as well. The fund for stormwater currently has a cash balance of approximately $715,000. The meters and pipes that we're talking about replacing have nothing to do with the homeowner themselves. We stop at the meter, so whatever happens on the other side of the meter for the homeowner is truthfully their business. Hooks and restrooms, we can certainly do that now. That's actually a great idea. I appreciate that. The hurricane fund balance is 3.6.
Did you make sure that you put them in the guides too to be compliant?
Oh yeah, sure. It is late, isn't it? Sorry. But we can look at putting hooks in restrooms now. That's very simple and a very good suggestion, so thank you. The hurricane balance currently is $3.6 million. I have not, there's nothing in the budget that I'm proposing for FY16 for any property acquisition. And the ISO rating, my advice would be to let your insurance company know about that, because they are an insurance company. I'm sure they're not offering a discount.
CERT program and
thank you,
BSO
sir.
confiscation funds.
I actually missed the question on CERT, so.
Sure. CERT program, do we, if you don't mind, or I'll let you say it again.
I just want to know how many neighborhoods have people, you know, involved in the program right now.
It's not necessarily neighborhoods involved in the program, it's individuals, and those individuals do reside within those neighborhoods, and I'm not sure exactly where they live, but we're always looking to expand the program to ensure that all the city areas are covered.
I will say this about the CERT program. There are a number of people, I think it's, the numbers that they have that are actually signed up for the CERT program compared to the very small amount that actually participate on a regular basis, there's a huge, it's disproportionate. And the ones that do it are dedicated and do it all the time. And they are rapidly getting older. But there are a lot that have signed up, but far too many of them don't participate. And BSO confiscated funds?
Yes, so those, we can only spend those dollars on very specific statutory requirements. And so if you have ideas, you can certainly share them with the chief, and we can see if it's feasible.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Is that it? Looking for a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.